across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. Thank you to Alex. Back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So, the plot thickens. US Ambassador Peter Mandelson has admitted he stayed friends with Jeffrey Epstein far longer than he should have. Well, the translation of that is, even though he knew he was a wrong 'un. After Epstein's 2008 conviction for underage sex crimes, he called it an albatross around his neck. Mate, you just got to quit. You've got to go. This, it's woeful. It's not even funny because of the subject matter. But people like Mandelson are the reason why people like Epstein exist. Also this afternoon, nearly 200 asylum seekers are suing the Home Office over unlawful detention at Manston, the migrant centre there near Dover, citing abuse, filthy conditions, family separations and denial of medical care. We'll look at that story in a couple of moments. And Poland says it is closer to conflict than at any time since World War II, following Russia's overnight drone attack. They've urged NATO to trigger Article 4 in response. Funny thing about Putin is the same thing about Israel. They don't give a fig about Donald Trump or what he says. They genuinely don't care. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Lots to get through. You can drop us a voice note there as well. Here's a question. Where do we draw the line on compensation? I mean, how often on this programme do we talk about living in a nonsensical, upside-down world? Black is white, up is down, left is right. It's a bonkers, Pixar-like existence where all logic goes out the window and common sense, coherence and reason are thrown onto a massive bonfire. We are constantly in a looped episode of gaslight, where governments and establishments reach for the most bizarre and illogical answers and solutions to solve, frankly, easy problems. We see it with immigration, welfare reform, and particularly the legal system. We're being played for fools. But it's within that issue of immigration where this first story firmly sits. I mean, this is kind of new territory, even for those gaslighters. The story that Channel migrants are in line for millions of pounds of compensation from the Home Office after being, quote, unlawfully detained in, quote, inhumane conditions. I'm suspicious about this. I'm smelling several sacks of rats. Almost 200 asylum seekers have lodged legal claims for their unlawful detention and mistreatment by the Home Office at Manston Migrant Holding Centre. This is nearish to Dover. They're citing, of course, you've guessed it, you're ahead of me, the European Court of Human Rights, or the European Convention, to be more precise, on human rights. Allegations include sexual assault, physical abuse, theft of property by guards, as well as disease. I don't know what kind of property you might have when you turn up as a destitute migrant, but that's another story. As well as disease-ridden, dirty and cold conditions. They're talking about outbreaks of disease like diphtheria, scabies. Man alive, where do they think they were? Forcible separation of families, denial of medical aid. The Home Office has refused to settle, to their credit, forcing lawyers for the asylum seekers to pursue the claims through court. Let me just tell you this. If you thought, well, there's no chance, surely, of any of this nonsense succeeding, then think again. There is sadly grim precedence for this. One migrant, quote, unlawfully detained at Brook House, that's an immigration removal centre at Gatwick, there for 3 months, subjected to apparently degrading or inhumane treatment, was awarded, you ready for this, 203,995 quid. This was just last October, just shy of a year ago. We're giving out the best part of £250,000 to someone who was in a removal centre who said, I don't like it here very much. Why he had a northern accent, nobody ever found out. Standard compensation awards for detaining migrants for longer than the 24 hours allowed by law amount to 500 quid per 24 hours of unlawful detention. But courts can also hand out aggravated exemplary damages as well. Look, let's just cut to the chase here. If this was some poor fella from Somalia who'd been thrown into a cellar and had spent the best part of the last 6 months hanging by his testicles, courtesy of the Home Office, I'd be the first to dish out some compo. OK? We're not that country. We don't want to see that. But every part of me screams that this is not what's going on here. We have go-to lawyers and chancers who know how to play the system. And by the way, if you think these figures are disturbing enough, the Home Office estimates Manston alone, the Home Office estimates around about 18,000 migrants went through that system, which naturally, as sure as night follows day, opens the door for further compensation claims for some sort of mistreatment. And that, kids, is where we are at. Where do we draw the line on compensation? I want your views on that. I want your views on Peter Mandelson as well, because the more I think about the Mandelson story, the more horrifying it is for Peter Mandelson. This man cannot continue to be the UK ambassador to the United States when he was hanging around a no-nonce, in legal parlance, paedophile, knowing full well the man was in jail. So he knew afterwards. OK, knowing somebody before something all comes out is very different. Lots of people knew people before they turned out to be a wrong 'un, or before it was established they were a wrong 'un. You might even have friends that later in life went on to commit some kind of crime. You can't be condemned for being their friend before that, but you can be condemned for being their friend after that. People go, what you hanging around with him for? He's an armed robber who beats women up. You're still drinking with him? This is the same thing. Peter Mandelson. This fellow was so addicted. He was so royally addicted to fame and power. It's the only thing that got him out of bed in the morning. Remember, he talked once, a famous Mandelson quote, about being perfectly relaxed around rich people. He loved a yacht. He loved a powwow with the Saudi royals. He loved an upper-class party. He enjoyed all of that canapé and champagne lifestyle. He loved it. And it was so seductive that he was willing to overlook the fact that while he was at Epstein's house, Epstein was at that moment in jail on child sex offences, while the flat Mandelson was in was decorated around the place with lots of young cherubic teen girls in all sorts of forms of artwork. Didn't notice a thing. He then went on to say, which is a massive libel to anyone who happens to be gay, that, well, because I'm gay, maybe I didn't notice. Oh, that makes you stupid, does it? Really? Is that the defence of this? This fella's up to his neck in it, and guess what? The Prime Minister is backing him. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Chloe Dobbs back with us, political commentator. Afternoon to you, Chloe.
Afternoon, Ian.
We'll come back to Mandelson, of course, in a moment. Let's start with that Channel Migrant story. In line to receive millions in compensation after some alleging they were unlawfully detained in inhumane conditions. Let's have a listen to the newly appointed Home Secretary, Shabbana Mammud, who was speaking just the other day about plans to deal with immigration.
Just days ago, I was appointed Home Secretary with one clear priority: tackling illegal migration. The government has already laid the foundations. We have lifted removals to 35,000 people and struck a historic agreement with France. But the challenge that we face is considerable, and we must go further. That's why I have hosted our Five Eyes allies: America, Australia, Canada and New Zealand. We have discussed the shared challenges that we face from enemies who have no respect for our borders, and we have agreed coordinated action to enforce security and protect our citizens, including tougher sanctions on countries who refuse to take back their own citizens who are living here unlawfully. I know that the British public expects us to bring order and control back to our immigration system, and as Home Secretary, I will do whatever it takes to secure our borders.
Yeah, I feel, Chloe, I've heard every Home Secretary say, I will do whatever it takes to secure our borders. Look, I want somebody to be ambitious. I don't blame her for that. But this idea that we will send people back to countries of origin, you've got to get those countries to agree to all of that first. I know there's ways of doing this, like stopping foreign aid and things like that. She won't go there. They will never play that card because it's the Labour Party. It's not in her DNA to believe that. But nonetheless, she's the person now in charge. And of course, this issue of compensation around asylum seekers that were in Manston, the migrant centre near Dover, is going to be a real shackle around her ankles over the next few months. And we talk about the figure of 200 who are suing the Home Office. It's worth remembering 18,000 migrants went through that particular centre. I think this figure could be through the roof.
Yeah, this story is going to be sending shivers down Shabbana Mammud's spine just after she's got the new job and she wants to show the country that she's going to be serious and she's going to get stuff done. As soon as she came in, she said, "Oh, we're going to put them onto places like RAF bases or military accommodation," to then have this story which basically sends her a message saying, if you try and put them on any sort of military accommodation, you are going to be met with an absolute storm from these lefty human rights lawyers. These lawyers are going to try and make it impossible for her. And I mean, just on that story, I think it's absolutely bonkers that the British taxpayer is being taken for fools once again. I think it's mostly the lawyers probably going and finding the migrants and begging them to create a case, as opposed to the other way around. Because the thing that's bonkers about it to me is that these migrants, before they come to Britain, they are in camps, in tents, in absolutely squalid, disgusting conditions in Calais, and often in refugee camps in various places along the way from whatever country they have come from, where they are in the most horrific conditions. Without a doubt, those conditions that they are in for months and months and years on end before they come to Britain are far worse than anything they would have endured at Manston, even when it was at that point where it was really overrun and had triple the number of people in it. So the idea that they had to spend a small amount of time in a camp that is maybe not a 4-star hotel, maybe has some problems, but is far better than anywhere they've stayed before possibly in their lives for some of them who have never had a proper home, to then make a legal claim and try and get a load of money, one of them, as you said, getting 200 grand, is just insane.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? And when I look at the kind of list, and this is a sort of typical thing a lawyer would do, they paint the worst possible scenario, that this place was, a rat-infested place, were disease-ridden, dirty, cold, thefts taking place by the guards that were meant to keep it safe. There were outbreaks of diphtheria and scabies, for goodness. Really? It was all of these things? I know this patch really well, and I can't remember at the time when lots of journalists had, previously had access to that place. Yeah, of course, there's always going to be somebody who says it's not the Sheraton. I get that. It's not meant to be. But I'm really struggling, and I'm not trying to be deliberately obtuse to the argument, but I genuinely struggle, Chloe, to believe that this was the standard case for people that stayed at Manston.
I highly doubt it. Whenever I hear stories of not even detention centres but hotels apparently being infested with rats and being horrible, squalid conditions, I always take it with a pinch of salt, because my experience staying in hotels in this country is that the worst you get is typically a Premier Inn or a Travel Lodge. We're quite lucky to have quite nice, clean hotels in this country. I highly doubt there are many migrants staying in hotels that are genuinely horrific and in breach of their human rights, as they are claiming with their lefty lawyers. And as I said, even if a hotel they're staying in or a detention centre they're staying in is a bit overcrowded and a bit run down, it is far, far nicer than where they would have stayed in somewhere like Calais or Dunkirk. And when people come to this country, they don't just turn up in Calais and straight away get on a boat the next day. They don't stay there for one night. People are staying there for months and months on end. Some of them, I met one guy who had been trying to get on a lorry every single day for a year in Calais, living in one of these tents. It's disgusting. I mean, you see it on camera where journalists have gone in, but it's not smell-o-vision. You can't smell it. When you walk in that place, I mean, these warehouses where they're staying, the stench is just unbelievable. Yep. I'm sure it's far worse than Manston, even when it was massively overcrowded.
100%. Let's look at this story. Big story today as well. could spell the end of our ambassador. This is US Ambassador Peter Mandelson, confessing to carrying on his friendship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein for far longer than he should have. Let's have a listen. This was Harry Cole from The Sun, our own Harry, doing an exclusive interview with him just hours ago. Here's what Mr. Mandelson had to say about his relationship with a well-known child sex offender.
One, I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done. And I regret very much that I fell for his lies. I fell and accepted assurances that he had given me about his indictment, his original criminal case in Florida. Like very many people, I took at face value what he said. With hindsight, with fresh information, many years later, we realized that we had been wrong to believe him. He's a charismatic criminal liar, we now see. And I regret very much indeed, I felt it like an albatross around my neck since his death in 2018 or 19 when it was. I feel a tremendous sense of regret, not only that I met him in the first place, but that I continued the association and I took at face value the lies that he fed me and many others.
He took it at face value. Of course, it should be said, Chloe, that the thing that used to mark out Peter Mandelson was that he was super bright, astute, knew where a bear trap was never fazed, worked out if someone was trying to send him up a cul-de-sac or whatever. He knew, he had eyes where most people didn't, an extra antenna for weeding out where the trouble lies. Apart from when it comes to visiting, sometimes when the man was in jail, Jeffrey Epstein's house.
He has to go, Ian. I mean, even if he can sit there and argue, oh, I didn't really know what was going on and I believe what he said until he was found guilty. This story is now causing another huge scandal for the government, regardless of what he says sitting down in an interview. He's done what Angela Rayner did, thinking, oh, I'll try and get myself out of this scandal and out of a resignation by sitting down and doing an exclusive interview, just like Angela Rayner did with Sky News about her house, and trying to make herself sound human and make up some excuses. I'm sorry, but that interview with Harry Cole, that is not going to get him out of this. And to me, it was very clear, I don't know if you tuned into the beginning of PMQs, Ian, that this is not going to go away easily. This is a nightmare for Number 10, just as the Angela Rayner scandal was filling all of the headlines. Kemi Badenoch made pretty much all of her questions about Lord Mandelson, and Keir Starmer was really struggling to answer any of the questions. Kemi Badenoch was asking, the vetting process that you did when you appointed this man, can you please release that publicly? And Keir Starmer was just avoiding the questions. So I think he's going to have to go. And the point that Kemi Badenoch made is this story has come at a time when we need Lord Mandelson to be focused on what has just happened with Poland. He's over there in the US talking to the Trump team about that now. We need whoever our British ambassador to the US is to be focused on that, not someone who is marred in scandal, worried about headlines. So I think they may keep him in his post until the talks with Trump about what has just happened in Poland are over, but maybe towards the end of the week. I think it's a matter of when as opposed to if.
Yeah, I think you're right. Chloe, stay with us. I hope you're right as well. Chloe Dobbs, political commentator, more of the big stories. We'll take your calls on that as well. 0344 499 1000. And on that first question on migrants and compensation, where do we draw the line on compensation in this respect? 0344 499 1000. 20 past 1. This is Talk.
was me who actually made the BBC Trust rewrite all of their rules when I was head of media for UKIP, and I argued, because they only based it on domestic elections, the most recent domestic election, i.e. they didn't involve European Parliament elections, and they didn't look at polling. And I kept making the case as head of media for UKIP back in the day, in 2013. Actually, you're doing a disservice to the general public when you look at polling and how many people actually want to hear from UKIP who are going to be voting for them. And I had to produce all this evidence. We had a series of meetings, and I was the one who changed the rules.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's Talk, 24 minutes after 1 o'clock. Chloe Dobbs, political commentator, is with us. A couple of stories as well that are happening. And there's a sort of certain synergy between what happened, Chloe, in Poland and what happened yesterday in Qatar. Obviously, we have the biggest two conflicts going on in the world right now. What's happening with Israel and Gaza, what's happening with Ukraine and Russia. And both making headlines for not dissimilar reasons here, of course. And that is sort of the invasion of airspace, I suppose, is one way to put it. Poland now saying this is the closest point to conflict since World War II, after Vladimir Putin's drones were downed by the Polish military. This, we are told, happens quite a lot, actually, flying drones over Poland, but I think it's one of the first times, if not the first time, that the Polish military have taken action. There were 19 of them and shot them down.
Yeah, this is scary given that we've got a NATO member having drones flown into their territory. It's early days. It's unclear as to whether this was possibly just some sort of mistake. If you look at the Russian media, they are, of course, as you can expect, denying that they have done this. It's all fake news. They say something to that, some sort of that effect. And we've got now them invoking which article? All the different articles and NATO articles.
There's Article 4.
But yes, that one is, which is different to Article 5.
Yes, and 3 for that matter.
Exactly. So this doesn't mean that we're suddenly all going to have to go to war because these drones have appeared in a NATO territory. It just means that they are calling on other NATO countries to condemn what Russia has done, and they're going to talk about it as they currently are doing in the White House now. They'll be trying to figure out exactly what Putin's intentions were here. This may be a case of Putin probably is a case of Putin not intending to start a big war in Poland and having a big war with NATO, but to send a signal to say, this is what I can do if I want to. Yeah. Watch out, guys. If you guys try and mess me around in the negotiations with Ukraine and you say I can't have any territory in the negotiations to end this war, you could pay the price. That's what I expect. I mean, Russia, they're known for doing little things to show their power.
This is very...
Whether it's killing somebody with nerve agent or sending some drones over Poland.
Putin. It's very Putin,
yes.
Isn't it? And of course, you know, it does rather tie in with the story of Israel launching this huge attack on Hamas leaders in Doha, in Qatar. This has not gone down particularly well with the White House. Let's have a listen to Donald Trump and his response.
I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. But I will say this, we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down today. I'm never surprised by anything, especially when it comes to the Middle East.
It's interesting. One of our colleagues in this building, Andrew Neil, of course, you know, a very forward-thinking, astute journalist and broadcaster, was making the observation that neither Israel or Russia, for that matter, really care what Trump thinks. They will do whatever they want to do. They'll have the press conferences. They'll stand side by side. They'll claim some kind of understanding of each other. But ultimately, despite that meeting with Trump and Putin, look at how that was all played out in a kind of almost Chinese choreographed sort of set up with the red carpet on the tarmac and everything. We know what's happening with, Trump's relationship with Israel has always been a strong one. But ultimately, these people will do whatever the hell they want, it seems.
Yeah, I think that Trump massively underestimated how difficult it would be to control, let's say, the moves of the chess pieces around the world. He came into power on a promise to end all the wars basically in a millisecond, right? We were given the impression that he'd come into power and within the first week the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza would all be over. And he has been proactive in trying to initiate negotiations. And we know that Trump is a very good negotiator, but there is only so much that he can do. Of course, these countries, I wouldn't say they don't care about what Trump thinks whatsoever, because this man is the leader of the West, and they need his money and they need his arms. But they will do, they'll push their luck, and I think that they recognise that when Israel, for example, does something like attacks Qatar to try and take out some Hamas leaders, it could be the case, arguable, that what Israel did was necessary. They took out a bunch of Hamas leaders, and that is what Israel is trying to do. And if they don't take out Hamas, we will have October 7th over and over again. They can come to some sort of ceasefire. And so there are many things where I think, it's sad if some people were injured and some people died, but you're going to have more suffering in the long run if they don't do these very contentious things. I think they recognize that Trump might secretly know that what they've done is the right thing, but Trump is putting on this act and saying, I condemn it, I don't want this to happen, because Trump has campaigned on a promise to end wars, and he really wants there to be peace everywhere. He doesn't want to see more escalation, because he knows that from a personal perspective it's bad for Trump's reputation, because it makes him look like a massive hypocrite.
And of course it happened on territory that is an ally of the United States.
Exactly.
So there is the real issue, and would have flown over American airspace out there in order to be able to carry out the attack. So there was clearly some sort of agreement from somebody somewhere. That maybe remains another question. Chloe, we hit the clock, but thank you. Chloe Dobbs, political commentator with us on the programme. Over to you on that one. The compensation question remains. We'll look into that in a couple of moments. And also Peter Mandelson. I think that's a real biggie, the Mandelson story. This is not sort of, the have a pop at Labour's choice of ambassador moment. This is too serious for that. The reason why people like Jeffrey Epstein exist and were able to carry out crimes is because of people like Peter Mandelson, those that gather around, those that legitimise their status in some kind of way. He's part of the problem, therefore he's got to go. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Half one. It is really worth having a deeper look at this story as well. 200 asylum seekers suing the Home Office. They're claiming unlawful detention, mistreatment at Manston Migrant Centre near Dover. It's actually nearer Margate, but take the point. They're citing abuse, filthy conditions and being denied medical care. The Home Office says there are around about 18,000 migrants that pass through this particular centre, which raises the prospect of huge compensation payouts. One migrant at a different detention centre did get over £200,000. That was at a removal centre as well. It comes as 2 children were among 3 migrants crushed at the bottom of a dinghy, with 3 others reported missing off the coast of northern France on Tuesday night. In a moment, we'll speak to Joseph Cotry-Monson, a lawyer who understands his territory well and a broadcaster. First, Gwaine Towler, political strategist and Reform UK board member. Gwaine, good afternoon to you. I mean, the kind of plot thickens, really, doesn't it, when it comes to the sort of upside-down, topsy-turvy world we're living in. We constantly feel like we're being gaslit somewhere along the line. You know, we have this incredible policy where we appear to be assisting all and sundry that come over 50,000 in just the last year. And yet the repayment for that by some is to try and sue for £250,000.
Well, it is the law. And it's, I believe those who arrived illegally should not necessarily be covered by the rules that have been set out. But so many of these rules have been set out by the Home Office. And so therefore, lawyers on the make will always take advantage of this sort of thing, and they do, and they have done for years. But the question is that should those who arrive in a legal fashion are then detained, should all the rights and privileges of being a UK citizen apply to them? I think not. And whilst we want to treat people properly, one of the claims, if I recall rightly, is that there was sexual abuse. Well, that's a criminal offence in its own. You should be going for compensation. Yes. You should be taking this person to court for a criminal offence.
100%.
And a lot of these things. So that isn't a compensation matter, surely. It is just wrong. But I mean, the bottom line is that these people shouldn't be here in the first place. And I don't think things like vaunted things like habeas corpus should necessarily apply to them. Not when it's in this sort of venue. They're only supposed to be there for 24 hours. Well, yeah, I'd like them only there for 24 hours and then deport them, rather than them still hang around in order to take advantage of our legal system, which is a great legal system, or something we should be proud of, but for our own citizens.
And it's the classic example, isn't it, of the whole ECHR rules and regs doing something much more than that original convention was set out to do. We're in this territory, it seems, all the time, and this, I suppose, is a kind of grade A example of it all.
I suspect the ECHR is already very unpopular in the UK. I suspect if these cases are granted, and these millions of pounds that are potentially being paid to those who arrived here illegally, those people who scrimp and save and pay their taxes, to seeing their taxes being spat all over migrants who they don't want to be here in the first place, will be an outrage of the first order. And if anything is going to be a death knell to this current setup when it comes to migrants, this will be it. Yeah. The anger, I mean, this would be large sums of money that the average taxpayer will pay all their taxes all year to pay one migrant compensation because they were unhappy about living in a camp for one day, for more than one day. It is an absolute disgrace.
Does it ultimately, Gwaine, come down to the same old argument? We have to leave the ECHR, and if we don't, then we're just going to continue to see more of these kind of cases.
The ECHR in itself is not going to solve this. Leaving the ECHR is not going to solve this. Apart from anything else, for many years now, the ECHR has been justiciable, so it is now part of our system of common law by which precedent is taken. So therefore, the ECHR is now embedded in our precedent. So it's not just the ECHR. We have to not just cut down the tree, but we've got to remove the roots. It has to be pulled out slowly and removed bit by bit, because It doesn't matter if it is the ETHR, if we overturn the Human Rights Act and the other things, because these cases have already been taking place in our common law system. They have already become part of our system. Even if you remove the actual law, it doesn't matter. They're part of precedent. And so it is not, you can't wave a magic wand and leave the ETHR, though that is necessary to do. There is a lot more work to be done. Yeah. And in the end, if we don't like the law, and I think right now the people of this country really do not like this law, what has to happen is you change the law. You pass legislation in the House of Commons and in the House of Lords and instruct the judges to apply the law as it stands. Right now, all they're doing is their job, which is applying the law.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, it really is as simple as that, isn't it? It's no more convoluted than how you've just outlined it. Gwaine, as ever, thank you very much for your time, sir. Really appreciate that. Gwaine Towler, political strategist and Reform UK board member. Let's get a word from Joseph Cottery-Monson, lawyer and broadcaster. Joseph, I'm sure certainly on that last point you probably agree actually with what Gwaine had to say there, but ultimately, just to coin a phrase, is this whole story a classic case of so-called left-wing lawyers taking the pee?
God, I don't know where to start. Can I say God on your talkTV?
Say God,
I've got great respect for you, Ian, but I've never heard such a load of drivel from an uninformed amateur lawyer as I've just heard from Towler, Trowler, whatever he's called. He's been using his trowel to dig up the dregs. Embedded in our precedent, we heard justiciable, we heard very fancy words. Not sure he knows what they mean. And I have to say, I'm being as polite as I possibly can. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And we agree, don't we, Ian, that we all want Britain to be great? Don't we think that on both sides of the divide? The thing is, being great is uncomfortable sometimes because it means you have to behave better than what Donald Trump once called S-hole countries, what a conservative politician in the 80s or the 90s, Norman Tebbit was it, called Bongo land. These countries that don't deserve our respect because they don't have proper governance. Do you know what we do in this country? We behave fairly. We don't abuse people who are in our charge. And you can try and leave the ECHR, and you can do that if you want to, despite the fact that it's embedded in precedent, making it impossible. Not a legal concept, Ian, that I heard in my 20 years practicing law and my time as a solicitor and a barrister. But you can't behave in such a way, and this isn't just governments, you can't behave as an individual to another individual in such a way where, especially where you have a duty to them, without justification, you subject them to, I mean, I was reading the article and I was impressed it was in the Telegraph because I nearly fell off my chair. You know, we were talking forced separations of parents and children. We've seen that before. How many people in this country, good, right-thinking people on both sides of the political divide, and I really don't want this to be something political, how many people on both sides of the political divide were horrified at the idea of parents, no matter what laws they may have transgressed in crossing a country, having children stolen from the arms of mothers by somebody in a uniform, and in some cases not yet returned. And the idea that even a version of that existed here and happened wholesale, thousands of people they allowed it to happen to. And you know, Towler, you know, in a way that people like him like to do, what they do is they take a little fact and they manipulate it in terms of the way they then tell the story. So he even tried his hardest, didn't he, to slip into that possibility of treating the talkTV audience as so stupid, which they are not, that they wouldn't notice that he'd said, oh yeah, for just a day. Oh, a little bit more than a day detained. These were people who'd been subjected. And I'm reading this out of a Daily Telegraph article. One you know, thinks of it as a right-leaning broadsheet, perhaps even more than that. You know, and I
mean, they're reporting it, aren't they? I mean, they're just reporting this, Joseph. And just to chip in here,
they're reporting it very fairly. And
well, you're working on the basis that all of this is true. And, you know, quite a lot of it might not even be true. These are the allegations.
Let me interrupt you on that. Okay, if they're just allegations and we're doing it in that way, why are we talking Why are we talking about this as if it's already happened and they're in line for millions in compensation? Channel migrants in line for millions of compensation. Sounds like
that's the headline.
That's the editor, of course. That's not the writer of the article, and we see that so often, don't we? An article that's quite informative and responsible, and then a completely misleading headline that's designed to rile you, designed to make you think, oh, these people, what are they doing? You know, they're taking millions. I've got a hard life. I can't get an operation in a hospital. I can't get the school that I want in my catchment area for my child. But these all they've done is
some of that is fair enough. I mean, for some people, they will be completely reasonable comparisons to make.
There will be, but I tell you what I'm reading here about outbreaks of diphtheria, scabies, forcible separation, I'm literally reading it word for word, forcible separation of families and denial of medical aid. And then we got sexual abuse, physical abuse, and theft.
They've got everything going on. This was something that Peaky Blinders couldn't have done any worse than what we're hearing here. But is any of it true? Is any of it true, though? I mean, Joseph, when I've spoken to journalists, I've not been into Manston. I have been to northern France a couple of times when I was talking to some of the people a few years ago now, but same story, really, trying to get across here. When I've spoken to journalists who know Manston well, they have their own contacts on the inside, nobody recognises this story. This is like there might be a case of one person, two people, half a dozen people that might have had, not the experience they want. I mean, these are people that have illegally come into the country, into the country, and didn't like the look of the accommodation, and then going, I had a bit of a cold, I've got scabies. What's going on?
Yeah, okay, sexual assault, physical abuse.
Well, you can say all of that, can't you? Physical, sexual assault.
Okay. Well, we're on the same page.
This sounds like worse
we're on the same page. We're on the same page.
Guantanamo Bay, by all accounts.
We're both better than this. We're on the same page. We don't yet know. We agree on that.
Agreed.
And we have a legal process which decides it. The Home Office and there's a lot of anecdotal stories and all of that, but we don't operate on the basis that's true. You know, we must think like people who believe in the process. We must think in a way like lawyers who aren't satisfied, and judges and juries who aren't satisfied until you get to the end of that process. But in that line, in that context, should we be talking about this as these people are getting millions? What's good for the goose is good for the gander, Ian. On the one hand, yes, it's unproven. This is a process. But I'm not the one talking about it. The Telegraph's the one talking about it. The Telegraph is the one saying they're in line for it. They're not in line for it.
Joseph,
there's a process yet to come.
All right, if true, obviously they would be in line for it. And I think if some people, if it comes down to the line of, if somebody was sexually assaulted, as Gwen Towler did correctly say, that's a criminal offence. I mean, somebody should be going to court, calling the police and reporting that. But it shouldn't take a lawyer, of it left-wing or right-wing, to come in and sort that out. You go to the police station at Margate and say, I was sexually assaulted.
I'm with you. Let's flip that, okay? So Roman Catholic priest scandals involving the abuse of children. We want those people to go to prison, don't we?
100%.
What do we think about the people in charge of the environments where that was allowed to happen? And that forms the basis of another claim, a civil claim, which involves money rather than prison. Are you telling me on the basis of that argument that you don't think that those people should be entitled to compensation? Of course, it's very fact specific, but at the same time, you can't just say, oh, there are police for that. What do police do? Police gather evidence, give it to the CPS, it results in a criminal case, and if there's a conviction, potential prison. How does that restore the life of somebody whose life has been ruined, who for the rest of their life will be traumatized?
So you're saying you go the compo route before you go the criminal route?
Well, the reality is that we have both. I'm sure, and I would expect, where these things have happened, the police are also involved. But the idea that these people should just go to the police and that's enough for you, well, I tell you what, if it's one of your family and they're damaged by a faulty government or a local council's building site, something falls over, and you go, oh no, it's fine because you can just, and God forbid somebody dies. Okay, well, that's manslaughter. That should be enough for you. No, it's not. What's you want these people to have to pay. And the 100%. Reason you want them to have to pay... I think
that I'd like to think, perhaps I should say, Joseph, that somewhere within this, I mean, the report, as you say, we go on the report in the Telegraph, talks as if there's an epidemic of this kind of stuff, whether it was disease, whether it was sexual assault, theft, separation from family, whatever the case. There's 200 people apparently suing the Home Office. One of them might have gone to the old Bill at Margate Nick and said, I've been sexually assaulted. Or their lawyer would have taken them.
As soon as I mean, if it's properly run, and it wasn't, but as soon as an allegation like that is made anyway, the police would immediately be called in. I would very much hope that as soon as a complaint, and expect that as soon as, even a badly run organisation. But I do want to say this.
Final word, Joseph, if you could, sir.
The fact that we do have this massive problem. The hotels, the government aren't prepared. We don't, there is a problem about the way in which this has to be dealt with. However, I do not think that every single migrant centre was like this. And if anyone thinks this was representative, or people are saying this was representative across the country, and therefore everyone's going to be doing it, I think that Manston was something of its own. I hope it was something of its own. I think it's very easy to say, migrants are getting millions and all of this. I think if migrants get millions in totality as a result of this treatment, it having been proved as true, well, it's a warning to government to treat people in a British and fair and humane way where they otherwise wouldn't. And I have to say, the government is held to the same standards as everybody else. And if they don't meet them, there are consequences.
All right, Joseph, on that point, thank you, sir. Joseph Cottery Monson, he's a lawyer and broadcaster. You heard what he said. Is that an over-generous analysis to what is going on? My worry on this, as I was trying to allude to with Joseph, is that it's not that hard for an ambulance-chasing lawyer to convince someone. What was your accommodation like? Well, it wasn't that good. It was a bit smelly sometimes because it was quite old. And create and construct a legal argument for compensation. Now, I'm not saying that is the case. There might well be 200 people who've had the most horrendous mistreatment of rape and abuse and goodness knows what, men and women. And if that is the case, we're in different territory. My journalistic and human instinct is that that's probably not the case. And I would be quite satisfied to publicly say, stand to be corrected, by the way, that there would be some ambulance chasing going on in a story such as this. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
or it's Angela Rayner, it was Louise Haig, it was Tulip Siddiq. It doesn't really matter where you look, it's failing. That's just a vomit-inducing photograph. He sat with a paedophile.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Here's one from Rich in Kettering who says that your lawyer is talking rubbish. If, as a parent, you act in a way that could recklessly endanger the safety of your child, then social services have a duty of care to protect your child from you. Bringing your kids on an unsafe boat across the channel is very definition of child endangerment. That's very, very true. Of course, the argument to counter that would be if you're escaping a war zone, this will be the argument, I'm not advocating it, then you do anything you can to get away from the horrors of the wicked dictator that wants to kill you all, apparently. Matt's in Cheshire. What have you got, Matt? Afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian.
Good afternoon.
I rang originally about the migrant thing, but I was just sort of thinking to myself, I'll tread carefully because it's a sort of on the Mandelson issue.
Yeah.
There seems to be an increasing link between Labour and a dismissive response to sexual assault and crimes. It started off quite shallow with Keir Starmer's not prosecuting Jimmy Savile, as quite a few people have been accused him of. Then we have a total indifference to the grooming gangs for decades amongst mainly Labour councillors. A refusal to accept men in women's spaces is not only weird but dangerous. And now we have the Prince of Darkness comes out that he may be sort of in touch with the world's most famous paedophile, and he may have been his best buddy while he was doing all his worst stuff. So there's a bit of a, as we all know, Labour are pretty weird, but this is bringing a new element to the Labour Party that I think...
That's a good point.
Many people have never really considered how really odd and peculiar Labour MPs and politicians are.
Is it Labour, though? Because obviously a lot of stuff happened under the Tories. A lot of the things that were ignored happened under the Tories. Some of those councils, some of them were Tory councils. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot. If I was a lawyer sitting here, that's the questions I'd be firing off in your direction.
Well,
is it about the system rather than the parties?
Obviously, there are bad people in all parties and bad people on both sides of the spectrum. My point is there's a growing link now as we reach back through time that they're sort of dismissive of. There was even a thing during the trans debate about minor attracted person.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that is just the most repulsive thing I've ever heard.
It's utterly bizarre, isn't it?
And that came from people on the left. Nobody on the right ever mentioned that.
Yeah.
That in itself has to... Stonewall, I think, came up with that. I'm not sure if somebody who worked for Stonewall made that comment or...
That would make perfect sense if they did.
It's like a general term that was used as if it's totally normal. Yep. And if it's like... It's trying to normalise probably the sickest thing you could ever imagine.
Correct. Yeah. Well, I think the Mandelson thing is kind of, it's, you know, a lot of these people back in the day, you know, whether it was Savile or anyone else of that era that were a bit, as it was almost dismissively called, a bit touchy-feely. Oh, he likes them young, likes his boys or likes his young girls. And it was kind of said as a sort of a kind of joke, you know, because overall he's actually quite a nice bloke. So, you know, come on, he's just got a few, he's a bit weird. He just likes to flirt with the girl. It was kind of written off in that sort of very casual way. And for years, because of that attitude, it was sort of tacitly, well, in fact, overtly legitimised. And I think, you know, what we got here with Mandelson is almost a kind of Premier League version of that, where people like Mandelson, those people that hung around Epstein, was the reason why he got away with this stuff, because he was a billionaire, he was a rich man, he was very powerful, he knew people, probably had a few secrets as well. He's just good old Jeffrey, you know, likes a young girl but never harmed anybody. It was that kind of thing. And if you have people like the Mandelsons and whoever else, whether it's Trumps or Clintons, innocently, I should add, hanging around with somebody, then that's the image people walk away with, isn't it? Every single time. It's like, no, they become untouchable. They're flipping Teflon as a result of this. Matt, thank you very much indeed. It's a great... The more I think about the Peter Mandelson thing, the more sinister and troubling it is. His own vainglorious nature, his desire to rub shoulders and mix with the good and the great and be around power. It was a seductive drug to somebody like Peter Mandelson. Couldn't help himself. I bet if you spoke to those that know him really well, they go, oh, that's what Pete did. He was always hanging around people who were worth a few quid. He loved a big chateau and a bit of a knees up with the good and the great. That's how we got away with it. 0344 499 1000. News headlines now at 2.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. There's so much to get through here. We are, of course, talking US Ambassador Peter Mandelson admitting he stayed friends with Jeffrey Epstein for far longer than he should have. Well, he's got that bit right. After Epstein's 2008 conviction for underage sex crimes, Mandelson called it an albatross around his neck. Yeah, it's not really about your feelings, Peter. Slightly misses the point. We'll come on to that in a moment. Also this afternoon, nearly 200 asylum seekers are suing the Home Office over unlawful detention. This is at Manston Migrant Centre near Dover on the Kent coast, citing abuse, filthy conditions, family separations and being denied medical care. We're throwing out the question, where do we draw the line when it comes to compensation? And the number of Brits who think the dangers of climate change are overblown has risen 50% in 4 years. Many people blaming the high costs of things like net zero for not quite being on board with the whole green Miliband-esque project. We'll have more on that as well, everything you need to know, and of course we'll bring you all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. So let's go back to this story of Peter Mandelson. I think he's up to his neck in it, frankly. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been slammed as a disgrace for continuing to back Mandelson despite fresh revelations about his relationship and friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. The Prime Minister insisted he still has his full confidence in his embattled US ambassador amid growing calls for Mandelson to be sacked. We'll come to what was said in PMQs in just a moment. But first, let's just remind ourselves, Mandelson did an interview with our colleague Harry Cole from his Harry Cole Saves the West programme. Let's have a little listen to what the American or the UK ambassador to America had to say.
One, I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done. And I regret very much that I fell for his lies. I fell and accepted assurances that he had given me about his indictment, his original criminal case in Florida. Like very many people, I took at face value what he said. With hindsight, with fresh information, many years later, we realised that we had been wrong to believe him. He's a charismatic criminal liar, we now see, and I regret very much indeed. I felt it like an albatross around my neck since his death in 2018 or 19, when it was. I feel a tremendous sense of regret. Not only that I met him in the first place, but that I continued the association, and I took at face value the lies that he fed me and many others.
Ah, poor Peter. Even so, the Prime Minister is sticking by his man in Washington when grilled in a fiery PMQ session earlier today. Have a listen to this.
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of child prostitution and sex trafficking that took place between 2002 and 2005. That is the precise period which Lord Mandelson called Jeffrey Epstein his best pal. Absolutely. Was the Prime Minister aware of this intimate relationship when he appointed Lord Mandelson to be our ambassador in Washington?
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship.
Well, let's speak with Oliver Harvey, chief feature writer over there at The Sun. Oliver, good afternoon to you. I mean, I think this is, that was an interesting PMQs. Curiously, not that it's the time to mark people's homework in this respect, but probably Kemi Badenoch's finest moment in the sense of holding somebody to account. I thought her questions were completely appropriate. The previous clip we heard, of course, was Mandelson himself talking about this albatross. Poor old Peter, he's got this terrible, terrible pressure that was on him. Almost spectacularly, I sense, missing the real mood of the severity of this story.
Well, Lord Mandelson is used to being at the centre of a political maelstrom. He had to quit the cabinet twice. Yeah. And so he knows how to fight for his political life. Of course, he's a civil servant now, and Keir Starmer will think a successful civil servant, ambassador to the court of Donald Trump, a trade deal signed. We've got Donald Trump coming over for a state visit very soon. He wouldn't want to lose him so quickly after losing his deputy prime minister. But the crux of it is, I think, and Mandelson himself almost laid the ground saying, the very embarrassing, in his words, stuff is yet to emerge. Now,
so there might be more to come on this.
This might be more to come, and it would depend on very much on how much contact he had with Epstein after his conviction. So he can flannel. He can talk about these holiday snaps. My best pal. He's sitting there in his bathrobe on Little St James. But after someone's been convicted of soliciting minors for prostitution, then you're in trouble, I think.
Yeah, God, we thought it was controversial when he met the Hinduja brothers. I mean, now we're in totally different territory. So here we are with this sort of defence of, Epstein was very charismatic and, I fell for his lies, etc. I mean, Mandelson's, the kind of DNA of Peter Mandelson, the Prince of Darkness, all of this stuff, when he came along, he was there during the Blair years. He was pre-Blair, as in working with Brown and Blair together, part of the project, as it were, for New Labour. I mean, this man had an antenna for trouble and bear traps in places where most people didn't have places. I mean, he was right on it across the board. He knew where the weaknesses were. He knew where vulnerabilities lie. No one was a greater master at that stuff. And yet, despite that, he found himself staying in a flat while the owner of that flat was in jail for crimes against a minor. The place was decorated with all sorts of works of art of young cherubic teens and goodness knows what else in various states of undress. And yet this very astute man, this real player on the political stage, failed to join any dots. He was seduced by the man's lies and writing him nice letters in his birthday card and goodness knows what else. I mean, this is it. The man is either pathologically stupid or something else is going on here where he just has to admit that, I did know what was going on and I ignored it.
I don't think he's pathologically stupid. I think his Achilles heel has always been his attraction, like a moth to the flame of wealth and power.
Correct.
So his first ejection from the cabinet was to do with a loan he took from Paymaster General Geoffrey Robertson to buy a house in
beautiful townhouse.
Beautiful townhouse in Notting Hill, where lots of people would like to live. But unfortunately, if you're on a relatively modest political salary, you can't really afford places in Notting Hill.
So you ask a mate to lend you 700 grand or whatever it was.
Correct. So Epstein, incredibly wealthy, private planes to Caribbean islands, a lovely townhouse in the Upper East Side, I think, and so Mandelson's drawn to that. He's drawn to the network, the nexus of politics, celebrity, royalty. The whole thing is in Epstein's 100%. At the centre of the spider's web. And if you lie down with dogs, you get fleas.
Yeah, and that seduction was kind of, was he blinded by it? Did he just think, this is... I made the very point you've just made, Oliver, in the last hour, that he was so seduced by that whole power thing. In fact, he had that quote, didn't he, about we're perfectly relaxed about being around the filthy rich.
Filthy rich, and also pay your taxes.
Yeah, indeed, back in the day. He loved a yacht, he loved a palace, he loved a powwow with the Saudi royal family, he loved to take a vol au vent with a prince or a princess, and, he enjoyed all of that. He was kind of almost in it for partly that reason, and everything about that he found mesmeric and just too much to resist. And I suppose the Epstein thing, knowing that Epstein had spent the previous 20 years with the likes of Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, all sorts of other people, a real centre of sort of New York and American society, but by that stage it was out the bag, and that's what makes this damning, isn't it? If all this friendship happened before any revelation, there's no story here, really. But the story is, actually, no, it was while it was going on. How do you survive that? I mean, even by his standards, you rightly said at the top, Oliver, he came back twice, and I think really came back a third time, didn't he? Because he came back to help Brown out. He went to the EU as a commissioner. He's been all over the show, this fellow.
He has, and we've talked about his love of wealth and power. He currently sits in one of the grandest abodes in the whole of the American continent, which is the British Embassy in Washington. It's a lovely Edward Lutyens building, and he would have probably thinking this is the kind of apex almost of his career. The guy that was one of the architects of New Labour, as a fixer extraordinaire, now working with with a Trump White House, and here he is at the centre of yet another political firestorm. Now, I mean, one Labour MP is also already calling for his head. Left-winger Bell Ribio Addy. Tories want an investigation, and Starmer's now come out and backed him to the hilt in the House of Commons.
And the more serious point about this is that, and I would stand by this, is Mandelson's friendship with Epstein and people like Mandelson were the very reason that Epstein could get away with this stuff for so long, because it's right at the centre of, if you like, high-end establishment, plutocratic billionaire figures that swirl around the scene. And by surrounding yourself with people who are influential in different ways, whether they're a tech millionaire, whether they're a political operator like Mandelson is the reason these people were legitimised, which is the reason why it took so long sometimes to pursue the Harvey Goldsteins and the Epsteins, because people just assumed it can't be them, or even if they thought it was them, they're untouchable. I would say this is more than like a minor error for Mandelson. I think his association with this man actually makes it quite sinister.
Well, I think Epstein, he is a clever, manipulative, charismatic, clearly, because he's managed to inveigle all these people into his web. But these people, the rich and famous that he collected like trinkets, were being used as collateral damage in a way, used as a get-out clause. Hey, I can't be this weirdo, sex fiend, because look at my friends around the table who I've coming to dinner, who's staying in my townhouse. So he's manipulated these people. He's lured them in hook, line, and sinker, and they've fallen for it. And they they're either greedy, stupid, or incredibly poorly misjudged.
Yeah. Or a mixture of all three.
Or a mixture of all three. And in a way, we forget about the victims of Epstein quite a lot, and they are calling for Mandelson to go. Well, we don't know exactly who, but reports coming out of America. Now, if that groundswell increases, if they're calling for Mandelson's head, then Sir Keir Starmer's going to have to sort of look and is this guy now for the chop, We
know how these things work. There's a natural tipping point that kicks in, isn't there? Campbell used to talk about if you're making the headlines for 5 days on the trot or something, then that's the point of no return. And you sense from this. I don't know what you think. Can he survive this? I mean, if anyone can, people say, well, Mandelson can.
Mandelson would be, it'd be furiously like a duck on water. The legs would be going furiously. 100%. Calls are being made. Favours are being called in. It really, really depends on, is there an email trove? Is there an email trove between Mandelson and Epstein after he was convicted? That's what remains to be seen. And if, and where that... And, presumably Mandelson, does he have access to his communications? He can now go back and check and see what was said. And has he presented that to Keir Starmer? Was he vetted? Was that looked at when he got this plum roll?
I can't imagine Mandelson at the moment is having very good night's sleep because, as you said, Mandelson himself said, well, there might be more to come out, which kind of sort of suggests that these aren't just going to be, the odd communication, but something that might be damning. It certainly hints at that.
I don't know what you thought, Ian, when looking at Harry Cole's great, but it's a great get. I've got a hat tip to Harry Saves the West.
Unbelievable,
really good get, really good exclusive.
And only Harry can call his own show Harry Cole Saves the West, of course.
Which remains to be seen.
None of us will get away with that, Norrie. But Harry can.
Let's see how Harry gets on.
We'll see whether you save the West, Harry Cole. We're watching you.
So where were we? We were talking about...
Yes, you were talking about the reaction in Harry's questions to him.
Oh yeah, that's right. So Mandelson said it's been like a sort of an albatross around my neck, and there was a hint I thought in his demeanour there that it's true. This has been weighing on him, and he obviously knows what's out there and what could come out.
Yeah,
and he did look like the pressure was coming down on him there a bit.
And he must have thought, when he got that job as ambassador, it's the perfect kind of retirement gig. I'll do, the term of the Trump presidency, and then off I go. He's got pensions coming out of his ear holes all over the place. He doesn't want for any money, and I can go away into the sunset and think, wasn't it great? But he could join that frankly, long, disturbing line of people who leave with an element of disgrace, even if he's not the perpetrator of this, but nonetheless a supporter of.
Well, that embassy's grandiose. There would be, you can imagine the cocktail parties, schmoozing
every day.
I mean, as you say, what a way to end a political career.
Yeah.
As bartering with the Trump administration and getting results.
Yeah. But his best friend was a paedophile. And he
my
knew
best
it.
pal, my best pal.
And
so
he
that
knew
this is going to. I mean, as you said, how many days can it be in the spotlight before action is taken? And it depends what's coming out and what's down the line.
Yeah. I bet you've never been so busy with sources and contacts at the moment, Oliver, waiting to see what happens next.
And you've got to remember this guy. Yes, he's one of our most senior diplomats now. He's
Yes.
Obviously
Big as
the
it
most
gets in terms of that
senior
world.
ambassador, but he's more than that, because he is one of the architects of the new Labour, the current, which is a strand into centrist Starmer politics.
Yeah.
He isn't just some diplomat we never heard of. He's key to modern Labour, and if there are misdemeanors uncovered, then it's not going to look good for the current administration.
Well, I was going to say, because ultimately, although this currently isn't the actual story, but the kind of next part of it is, this is about Starmer's judgment, isn't it? Starmer appointed this.
The Starmer appointee. Starmer's now stood up in the Commons and stood by it, standing by him in unequivocal terms.
Correct.
He's backing his man. I mean, he used to criticise Boris for backing people he thought should go. So his Starmer's political credibility is also up for grabs this week, depending on where this Mandelson story goes now. So, he very much has expended political capital on Peter Mandelson today.
It's funny, if you were asking random people, give us the name of two well-known, high-profile Labour figures. It wouldn't be long before two people said, I don't know, Angela Rayner, Peter Mandelson. They'd come up in that same breath, and yet, one walked the plank last week and one might be walking the plank this week.
No, absolutely.
Funny times.
And it's not going to look good if he loses two senior figures.
100%.
In such a short space of time.
We'll see. Listen, Oliver, great to see you. Thank you very much. Thanks, indeed. Ian. We'll keep in touch and find out what the next instalment is of this curious story. And no one saw this coming a week or so back, but there it is. Mandelson back in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Don't see really how he manages to survive as ambassador to the US, does he?
doesn't matter where you turn at the moment in the Labour Party or where you look, whether it's Peter Mandelson or it's Angela Rayner, it was Louise Haigh, it was Tulip Siddiq. It doesn't really matter where you look, it's failing. That's just a vomit-inducing photograph. He sat with a paedophile.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's a lot to get through. I'm going to talk to Steve in Preston in just a second on Mandelson. On compensation and all the rest of it, great one from John here. He says, Ian, if you have an accident and you're unable to work and you need to claim benefits until you're able to work again, you put a claim in for compensation because the accident wasn't your fault and you win the case, all the money you receive in benefits has to be paid back out of your claim. It's deplorable that migrants are even considering making claims for compensation after the generosity the British people have shown them. But if they are successful in their claim and they're paying back the 40,000 quid a year it costs to keep them and everything else they've had for free, it's outrageous. Yeah, thank you, John, for that. It's just reminded me as well, you know those cases when if you're in prison, you've done 25 years and it's a miscarriage of justice, and they say, we have a court case, we realise this bloke should never have been in jail, we're going to give you £1 million compensation, but then they take off the cost of your board and lodgings for the previous 25 years, which was in jail. Hang on a second, is that right? Well, their argument is, well, you would have had to, I think John makes a great point. Back to Mandelson. Steve's in Preston. What have you got for us, Steve? Afternoon to you.
I just find it quite shocking, really, with Mandelson. He is a guy who's been in senior positions. He's not resigned once, he's resigned twice, and likely now he'll either be sacked or resign a third time. I just think with successive leaders who've appointed him to these positions, he's either got something on them or they're just seriously, serial bad judges of character. Because when he got appointed to this position, I personally thought it's not a matter of if something comes out about Mandelson, it's a matter of when. And
that's a good point. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because every time...
Because like I said, he's either a bad judge of character or he's corruptible. Because when you look at all the things that have been
is he just
levied against him?
Is he so wedded, Steve?
It's always people.
Is he so wedded to the idea of
influence? A classic one, with the Italian businessman. He got a free cruise on his yacht.
Got all
the
of
next
that.
thing he does, he puts tariffs on shoes coming in from China, and that bloke's business was luxury shoes.
Shoes.
You can't make this up. I just don't know what it is that people find about him. They think he's worthy of such a senior position. Like I say, I just find him odious and just a...
But I reckon when he was standing there in the White House with Trump, I think what I think happened is that Starmer thought, right, who do I put in this position? Mandelson has got all, he's a slight oddball, he's a bit strange, but he's a good operator. And I think what he did was essentially appoint somebody who was a safe pair of hands. And every time Mandelson's given a speech recently, I saw one a couple of days ago, he's always blowing smoke up Trump's trouser leg, if you've noticed, Steve. Loves every bit of it. Steve was there and then he kind of disappeared somewhere along the line. Anyway, good man, Steve. Thank you very much indeed for that. Here's another one from... That's a bit strange, wasn't it? Here's another one from Ian, who says, why do these people have any rights? We're talking about the people, illegal immigrants, legal or otherwise. I don't understand how you can come from living in a tent on a beach illegally, breaking into a country, and then immediately expect to receive accommodation at all. Well, that is a reasonable argument, isn't it? You might think. But apparently the way the law works is that argument that Ian's just put, which I 100% agree with, I mean, can you imagine the audacity of, I don't know, ending up in a place apparently of safety? Might not be brilliant, might be an old barracks, it might be, a bit wobbly in places, it might, sort of be a bit scenty in the sense that it's a bit old, but it's safe and you are dry and you get food. I can't imagine then going, oh, sorry, this ain't good enough, mate. Hang on, you just escaped a war zone, your entire family are about to be wiped out by a wicked dictator, and you're banging on about the quality of your mattress. Are you for real, sunshine? You might think that. Andrew in Hertfordshire. Andrew, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Hope you're well. Look, the Mandelson thing is very straightforward.
Yep.
At the end of the day, all he ever says is he regrets. He regrets. What he did was wrong. And Starmer, once again, it shows the lack of judgment on his part.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that's for you and I is quite interesting is I think Mike Graham worked on a very good story when he was in power and he was going down to Brazil, and it was Alistair Campbell who was screaming down the phone at Mike not to pursue the story. It's young people, abuse. It was young girls.
Yeah.
Why was he there? Because the word that's there is young. And in relation to the statement about being gay, that is absolutely abhorrent. Gay people are wonderful. They add to society. Child abusers are separate people. So he's actually, it's really wrong, but it's interesting that Rayner threw her son under the bus, and Mandelson has just thrown gay people under the bus. It was young people that Epstein had access to. It was young girls that people focus on. But what hangs around with young girls? Young boys. Mandelson has to explain what he was doing in that shot in the paper in a dressing gown, what had just happened.
Yeah, I think but isn't the person in that photograph a young girl or a youngish girl? The picture, if we're talking about the same one.
Yeah, but the one consistent theme is that young girls that were in Epstein's custody or within his properties were abused.
Correct. And the fact that while Mandelson was there on one occasion was literally at the same time that Epstein was in jail. So it's not like he could ever say he didn't know, because he would have known, and he would have known that there was lots of other evidence around at that time to say, if nothing else, this guy's a wrong 'un. And if you're somebody who, needs to retain credibility because of your kind of role and the sort of jobs you have, then why would you be anywhere? I mean, you'd get the hell out of there. You'd be calling a cab before, you could shake a stick, right? You'd be gone.
Yeah. Why was he going back to that well? What was there that he needed?
Well, I don't know whether I know we can speculate on that, but I do think it's very easy to underestimate, Andrew, just how much of an aphrodisiac power is to Peter Mandelson. I think it's the thing that gets him out of bed in the morning. Mixing with the good and the great makes him feel that he's somehow reached that status. That's how he's always been. I have met him a couple of times, and I remember seeing him do an after-dinner kind of a press gallery speech at the House of Commons. I mean, the guy's an incredible operator. He was a great speaker. He ticked all of those boxes. But, like so many, they have vulnerabilities, and I think this is absolutely one of them. Andrew, I've got to move. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. It's 2:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This one comes in from Simon, who says they can have their compensation as soon as the grooming gang survivors have had theirs, along with the post office, blood scandal, nuclear testing scandal. These lawyers need this American-style judicial system to be toned down. Yeah, don't let anybody tell you there's not something going on there in terms of ambulance-chasing lawyers. I mean, it just seems. You listen to the description of apparently what Manston was like. I mean, it's beyond anything the Taliban dreamt. What was the Taliban famous prison? Was it Abu Ghraib or something like that? Seems to ring a bell. That's how this is being described. I'm really struggling, having known loads of journalists over the years that have been to Manston. And been to Manson, I don't mean when it was an airfield. I'm talking about when it was doing what it was doing here. And no one ever reported back on any of this. Now, that doesn't mean that some terrible things might not have happened. Not disputing that. But the catalogue of misdemeanours from staff and what was going on is so great. You look at that and think, wow, really? Where was this? Lebanon. Let's get to this story. 25-3 now. The number of Brits who think the dangers of global warming are overblown has jumped 50% in just 4 years. Net zero doommongers is partly to blame for this. A survey shows that 1 in 4 voters now dismiss climate fears, while 16% say global warming isn't caused by humans, up from 11% in 2021. This is not the direction of travel that Ed Miliband would like to see. Support for banning new petrol and diesel cars has also fallen to 1 in 3, and just 16% would pay higher bills to switch to electricity. Will Jones is the editor of the Daily Sceptic. Afternoon to you, Will. All going swimmingly on the green agenda, it seems.
Yeah, we're seeing the collapse of the net zero climate alarmist agenda in real time. We're really seeing the public turning against this agenda that's been completely overplayed, I would say, by the elites, by the politicians, by the scientists as well, who often seem to act more like activists with papers that they put out in the United Nations as well. And people just are increasingly not buying it. And although that they might still tell pollsters that they believe in man-made global warming and that they are worried about it, they'll still say that. More and more are prepared to say they don't believe it, and more are saying they don't know. But when we actually look at the bottom line, when we look at what people are willing to do for this thing that they suppose that most of them still say they supposedly believe in, although less and less, as we've heard, very few of them are actually willing to pay anything to counter this threat that supposedly is threatening the planet. We see that nearly 9 out of 10 people now say that they oppose paying more on their energy bills in order to counter the supposed climate threat. And we also see that just a very, very small proportion, just 70% of people, that just 20% of people are now saying that they're willing to pay any more taxes at all to counter the climate threat. So even though it's still it's increased by 50%, but it's only 25% of people say that they don't believe in man-made global warming anymore, or they think that it's overblown, I should say. Only 20% are actually willing to pay anything on their taxes, and even fewer on their energy bills to do anything about it. One of the arguments I've always kind of tried to advance on this, Will, is the kind of alarmist nature of it. I think of COVID when a virus came around. They closed down the Western world for near on 3 years, putting people out of business, giving kids a mental health crisis. Individuals couldn't go. I mean, the greatest reaction ever. With this whole green agenda, we are simultaneously told by the good and the great that we're all going to die in X amount of years. There'll be no wildlife. We won't be able to survive the temperatures we're going to live in. And yet the very things that apparently cause this, I don't know, gas-guzzling 4x4s, if you like, all perfectly available to buy. In fact, you can buy as many of them as you like. Sadiq Khan's ULEZ zone. It doesn't stop you driving around it. In fact, you can pollute as much as you like in the ULEZ zone as long as you pay for it. It's the sort of inconsistent. And I think you look at that and go, hang on a second.
This sounds more like a money racket than anything else, because if we really were about to die, and in relative terms, the human journey, that's kind of what we're being told, then you wouldn't just be sticking a camera up and, sticking a tax on my petrol tank. You'd be banning all this stuff. And it's that duplicity that it jumps out at me every day of the week. I think, well, really? Oh, is it? If it's as bad as this, I think the reaction would be almost on a warlike footing, Will.
Absolutely. You have to wonder whether the elites themselves, the politicians, really believe the alarm that they're putting out. We saw that, as you say, with COVID, with the supposed grave threat of this deadly virus, and then we find out that in private, the people imposing these restrictions, these extraordinary, extreme lockdowns on the population, unprecedented restrictions, were getting together to have parties and boozing in the office and meeting up for illicit affairs and all of these things that they were banning the rest of us from doing. They clearly didn't really believe it themselves, and we see the same thing with the climate narrative, the climate alarmism. Do they really believe it? If they really believed it, would they not be taking more radical action? Would they not be pushing it more? Having said that, I don't really want them to be pushing it more.
No, of course I don't want to either. But it does rather it sort of exposes something here, doesn't it? These people speak evangelical. It's like a death cult, and whether it's Greta on a boat somewhere, or whether it's Ed Miliband and all manner of people, and yet. Actually, it doesn't quite make sense. Nothing makes sense. And it doesn't surprise me, therefore, that quite a lot of members of the British public have jumped on this and gone, no, I'm not buying into this.
Well, there's always been these doomsday scenarios that have been put out. Previous generations, it's been religious and these idea that the world is going to end and we must all take radical action. History is littered with these tragic stories of cultures and peoples taking extreme measures to counter an entirely imaginary threat. And even if you think there's something to this idea that human activities are increasing the temperature of the planet, you have to ask how much is that? How much are humans really contributing to this changing climate, which has always been changing? How dangerous really is it? How much can we really not just adapt to it? Would that not be cheaper? Would that not be more effective? Are there not benefits in being a little bit warmer in carbon dioxide, which is, of course, helping to green the planet? Is it really as drastically bad? Is it even that bad at all? Even if you accept some of the narratives that are coming out from the scientists, even if you accept that, how bad really is it? Do we really need to take this radical action, or is it, as some on the right especially have suspected for a long time, is it not rooted in these anti-capitalist narratives, anti-industry, industrial civilization, anti-Western civilization? How much is it actually rooted in this very often radical left-wing ideology that actually sees industrial civilization, Western civilization, capitalism, even humanity itself as some kind of inherent problem that needs to be solved.
100%. And it is a classic tool of the left, isn't it? We saw it with Black Lives Matter when the man was killed by police, George Floyd killed by police in the USA, and suddenly people start marching in their thousands on the streets of Westminster, and suddenly describing our country as if we're, I don't know, Johannesburg in 1978 or, North London in 1980. I mean, just extraordinary. So you think, hang on a second, there's people on my telly telling me that racism is worse than it's ever been. And similarly with this, it's a tool, I think, that's used that when you get to making life better and we have cleaner air than we've ever had, we don't use coal in any meaningful way. Even a 4x4 is subject to all manner of previously EU regulations, so they have to be built and designed. Buildings are designed in different kind of ways. We don't have guff coming out of chimneys like we used to. We insulate homes in ways that would have been unthinkable 2 decades ago. We do all of this, and the same people on the left go, nope, we're all dying of air pollution. It's worse than it's ever been. You think, whoa, hang on. It cannot be worse than it was 20, 30 years ago.
Absolutely. And yet, what amazes me is how much these ideologies take over what should be the bastions of objectivity and scientific fact. You see scientific publications getting all caught up in what just seems to be this massive exercise in groupthink and mass hysteria. And although at the moment the United Nations IPCC, the scientists there have been what they actually put out in their scientific documents is much more measured than the political spin that's put on it. Increasingly, you see even the scientists getting caught up in this, and it terrifies me because they're the people that we rely on to bring objectivity
100%.
and to bring and that worries me, and it's gonna have to break. We can see the British public aren't buying it so much anymore, and increasingly I believe that the true level of collapse of the narrative is greater than this poll shows. That people don't necessarily say what they really believe to an opinion pollster, and actually also YouGov has been shown to err on the side of supporting the progressive narratives and collectivism. So I believe that the collapse is worse than even shown in this YouGov poll. So people aren't buying it anymore. But we really need this sharp correction, and we need the scientists, more and more of the scientists, to break ranks and to start saying, actually, you know what? Screw the fact that this is going to affect at the moment the funding that I get, because that's often what drives it. Is the funding is controlled politically? Then I'm gonna start speaking truth, and I'm going to say how it really is. And as they stand up and say that, then we will see more and more this breaking, this collapsing of this narrative.
Yeah, and they are it is a warped ideology. You know, the sort of people that think Isambard Kingdom Brunel, was essentially like Adolf Hitler, or James Watt, Michael Faraday. These kind of people were hang on, these are the people that brought progress, social mobility, and all that followed on from their great inventions and innovations. But again, nothing quenches the thirst of those people, because they continue to try and they want to slay another dragon. I was reminded, just talking on this subject, when we began, when I was just referring to that, never being able to please some of these people. When I don't know if it was Sadiq Khan or Boris Johnson, but when Transport for London first announced they were going to have, cycle lanes from literally east to west, north to south, and every flipping road in between. I remember I said to my producer at the time, let's get, somebody who's really known for cycling. I can't remember who it was now, but I think it was a journalist from The Guardian. It would be, wouldn't it? Who came, I said, let's have a chat to them and get their reaction. And I introduced this guy. I said, this must be a great day for you as a cyclist to hear this announcement from the mayor's office. And he said, it's outrageous. And I said, what? Why? He went, well, it doesn't go far enough, does it? It's like, whoa, there you go. There you have it. Right in a nutshell. This is a political battle.
Yeah, and you've probably heard of watermelons. That's what they're often called, the activists. Green on the outside, red on the inside, like a watermelon. They have this veneer of greenery that is all about climate or some other green or clean air or whatever it is. But on the inside, there's this red, this left-wing, radical left-wing, almost socialist communist agenda to take over the commanding heights of the economy, to subject them to a collectivist agenda, which is hair shirt and austere, getting rid of all the modern luxuries, returning to these.
Living in a cave, and that might make some of them happy. Listen, Will, great to talk over this one. Will Jones is the editor of the Daily Skeptic. Thank you to him. Over to you on that one. 0344 499 1000. I said right at the beginning, didn't I? I said I used the phrase often on the programme about living in this nonsensical upside-down world, this Pixar-like existence. And that's just another kind of example of this sort of stuff. 0344 499 1000. We're going to be back with you in a few moments. We've got a brand new Voice of Doom, by the way. Wow. The last one only lasted 3 days. Can this one do any better? Find out next on Talk.
was me who actually made the BBC Trust rewrite all of their rules when I was head of media for UKIP, and I argued, because they only based it on domestic elections, the most recent domestic election, i.e. they didn't involve European Parliament elections, and they didn't look at polling. And I kept making the case as head of media for UKIP back in the day, in 2013. Actually, you're doing a disservice to the general public when you look at polling and how many people actually want to hear from UKIP who are going to be voting for them. And I had to produce all this evidence. We had a series of meetings, and I was the one who changed the rules.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A little bit of breaking news. Defence Secretary John Healey has said he's asked UK armed forces to look at options to bolster NATO's air defences over Poland. This is after those Russian drones were shot down over Poland yesterday. This was an extraordinary moment, not new to Poland entirely, but 19 of them in one go. The Polish military say, "We're having none of that, mate," and shot the beasts down. We'll have more details on that as we get it. Voice of Doom, brand new Voice of Doom. This is the mystery voice, essentially, with a political edge. You're looking for a politician. Here's the question. Who is this?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
Oh, OK. Is that? I was trying to ascertain whether that's a tricky one, or I think it's a bit tricky. I think it's doable. Here it is again.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
87222. Message 87222. Don't phone, just message. If you think you know who this is.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
And if we get a right answer, we'll tell you after the news. Back to your calls. Louise is in Kent. Louise, what have you got for us? Hello.
Hi. Well, actually, it's a couple of things, actually, Ian. Well, firstly, I mean, I've read about climate for a very long time, and I've been waiting for this moment for it all to collapse. It's going to happen. We know that.
The climate's going to collapse, or the argument about the climate is going to collapse?
The argument about the climate is going to collapse, because I'm a climate realist, and I don't believe it's man-made. It's all happening, etc. So that wasn't, Now, the first thing is about this immigration, this Manston camp. For starters, they've all come over from terrible conditions in France. So whatever they're getting here is better than that. If there's disease in the camp, it's because they've brought it in. If they can't get medical help, well, join the queue if you're coming to live here, because none of us can either. And actually, the tented camps in places like Greece, do any of them ever sue, which are far worse than here?
Yeah.
So there's that bit. The other bit is about Mandelson, because we're missing a bit of the point here, because this birthday book, apparently, nothing seems to have occurred about Prince Andrew in it. And don't forget, with him, actually, no more has been proven about him than actually Mandelson, who seems to be more damning evidence about him, about how much he was involved with Epstein, than even Prince Andrew. And yet Prince Andrew, for whether rightly or wrongly, has lost everything.
Well, he has, but then there's a very specific allegation, isn't there, against Prince Andrew?
Well, there was Godfrey, but that was never ever proven in many ways.
Yeah.
It's a bit vague as well, because I think she was 17. Well, in this country, that's not illegal, whereas over there it is.
It was illegal in America. Yeah, still a terrible look, even if it's not illegal.
But what I'm trying to say is that Prince Andrew has lost everything. He was a World Trade Envoy, he's lost everything. And yet Mandelson, at the moment, is getting away from it.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, but what's to come, Louise? There could be more. If more comes out, then clearly he won't be able to survive. He only needs, and as our guest said, he's one email away from disaster.
I hope not, but what a mess this government is in.
Isn't it? I mean, man alive, you've lost
every week. We've had Angela Rayner last week. You know, we've had
You've got the corruption minister who had to go because she's embroiled in corruption. allegations. The homeless minister had to go because she made homeless previous tenant. That's the loose allegation. And, of course, Angela Rayner decided to swerve some tax. Peter Mandelson. All of this is in a very short period of time as well. And these are big ones. They're not like little bits of tittle-tattle.
Screaming out for wealth taxes, and yet we know all the wealthy have run away.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're in a mess.
Somebody the other day said to me, when I said about climate, I said, well, are you aware that the Antarctic's actually been putting on ice, and the great big ice shelf about to break off is due to a great big underwater volcano venting? She said, where do you get that stuff from? She said, did you get it off the BBC? I said, no, I don't listen to the BBC. She said, well, I only ever listen to the BBC. They've got BBC Verify. If it's not on the BBC, it's not true.
Oh, that's a beauty, isn't it? I thought you said boozy then. Well, BBC, yeah.
I nearly spat my lunch out.
I love it. Louise, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a word in from Angie in Plymouth. Angie, Peter Mandelson. How long's he got, Ange?
Oh, my goodness, if I was in charge, less than minus 10 seconds. Ian, thank you so much for having me back on again. Sorry it's 2 weeks in a row for you.
It's all right.
But I just wanted to say, this just proves that talkTV are spot on the money. Mike Graham is always right. And I'm sorry, but it goes further than Mandelson, as far as I'm concerned. If a prime minister of this great, and I do believe it's a great country, I love this country and everything it stands for, but if this prime minister is prepared to employ somebody who was best mates with one of the worst paedophiles in history, he's up there as far as I'm concerned with Mara Hindley and Rose West, all that lot.
Well, I mean, look,
what does it say about him?
It's 100%, isn't it? I mean, you can't. His get out would have been that if he knew him before all of this, that would have been fine. Like lots of people can know a wrong 'un before you knew they were a wrong 'un. That's not their fault. But this happened once he was in jail. I mean, he was in jail for crimes against a minor, for God's sake.
I know. It's just, honestly, I'm sorry to bother you again, but I just had to...
No, you don't. No need to apologise.
I do think Mike is right. I cannot see this government surviving to 2029. Please, God. As a committed Christian, I pray for that every day. But, I mean,
I love the fact that the eradication of this government is in your prayers, Angie.
It certainly is, every day.
Yeah, well, we share that point, certainly. Angie, thank you very much indeed. Angie in Plymouth. This one from Rachel. It says, I don't believe a word Mandelson said in that Harry Cole interview. He's got a reputation of being one of the brightest, shrewdest operators in British politics. Now he's trying to persuade us our view of him was all wrong. Yeah, it beggars belief. The reason these conversations are really helpful is because sometimes in life there are certain scenarios that crop up where you have to keep saying it. And after you've said it half a dozen times, it really does crystallise and illuminate. And you go, wow, Peter Mandelson was apparently my best pals with Jeffrey Epstein, the serial paedophile. Not before they knew he was a serial paedophile, even while he was in jail, writing nice notes to him. But what did he write after he came out of jail the first time? And what had happened to Epstein in the meantime in terms of allegations? Peter Mandelson himself said that there could be more to come out on this. I mean, if there is, he's toast. I mean, will he swerve this one? He shouldn't, but he might. He shouldn't, but he might. As our previous guest from The Sun said, Oliver, one email, one positive, glowing report from Mandelson about Epstein, then Mandelson's dead. We'll take more calls on that. We've also got a brand new voice of doom. Who is this?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
If you think you know, 87222. We're going to get the news headlines now. It's 3 o'clock. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome back to the programme. What have we got? Nearly 200 asylum seekers suing the Home Office. That is the headline. This is over alleged unlawful detention at the the Manston Migrant Centre, which is on the Kent coast near Dover, citing abuse, filthy conditions, family separation and being denied basic medical care. What is the truth in all of this? We won't know just yet, but where do you draw the line on compensation? We'll have more comment from you on that. Also this afternoon, US Ambassador Peter Mandelson has admitted he stayed friends with Jeffrey Epstein for far longer than he should after Epstein's 2008 conviction for underage sex crimes, calling it an albatross around his neck. Yeah, right. And US President Donald Trump has blasted Israel's strikes on Hamas leaders in Qatar yesterday, calling it a mistake that damages peace talks. We'll talk to Natasha Hausdorff on that point in just a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Before we go any further, just briefly, the voice of doom. Have we got a winner? Remember, we played you this mystery voice before the news.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
Who's that then? These are some of the guesses. Jeffrey Archer. Yeah, I can see why somebody would say it's not the right answer, by the way. Royston Vasey, Damien Green. That makes sense too, but no. Robert Mugabe, definitely not. Keir Starmer, Rupert Lowe, Chris Grayling, all wrong. Vince Cable, no. Paul Scully, no. And former Lib Dem, he never leader, was he? Simon Hughes, no. None of those are true. We haven't got a right answer. It means it rolled. Can we have another listen, Amy?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
It rolls over to tomorrow at about 2:45. Now, US President Donald Trump has blasted Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar, calling it a mistake that damages peace talks. The airstrikes in Doha killed several Hamas members, but missed top chiefs who were meeting about a US-backed ceasefire. It comes as Keir Starmer says he'll also condemn the attacks when he meets Israeli President later today. Here's what he said at PMQs.
I condemn the strikes that Israel carried out in Doha yesterday. They violate Qatar's sovereignty. They do nothing to secure the peace that the UK and so many of our allies are committed to. I spoke to the Emir of Qatar last night, soon after the attack, to convey our support and solidarity. He was crystal clear that notwithstanding the attacks, he would continue to work on a diplomatic solution to achieve a ceasefire and a two-state outcome. He and I are on the same mind on this, Mr. Speaker. That is why I met President Abbas on Monday and why I will meet President Herzog later on today. I will be absolutely clear that we condemn Israel's action. I will also be clear that restrictions on aid must be lifted, the offensive in Gaza must stop, and settlement building must cease.
The Prime Minister talking earlier today. Let's speak with Natasha Hausdorff, barrister and legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. Natasha, good to have you back on with us. There does seem to be some fairly widespread condemnation of this. That's not always a surprise, looking at some of the rather interesting leaderships we have around the world. Maybe that's another story. This from Starmer, and of course we heard what Mr. Trump said. What's your reaction specifically to the attack yesterday in Qatar?
Well, the attack was in some respects not surprising given the warnings that Israel had issued that Hamas leadership would not be safe, even if they were hiding out in Qatar. And indeed, President Trump's recent warnings that the refusal to engage with US proposals, really the last chance that the Hamas leadership and the negotiating team were being presented with was fast passing. But the reaction really does underscore a level of hypocrisy which is deeply shocking. This is, of course, an entity, a sovereign entity, that has been pre-7th of October and certainly post-7th of October hosting, supporting financially, but also providing all sorts of resources to the leadership of this internationally prescribed terrorist organisation, and not to have heard any condemnation the context in which this strike occurred, and this, resounding suggestion that Keir Starmer and others are condemning it, is perhaps surprising given, what international law says about combating terror organisations and certainly not supporting them in your country.
So in that sense, the big accusation seems to be, this happened in a sovereign country and that therefore it crosses a line. That in itself, to you, even as a lawyer, is not a reason to join in with the condemnation from America and the United Kingdom and others.
No, there's pretty consistent state practice. The war on terror, of course, gave rise to many strikes against terrorists in third countries that were harbouring them. Osama bin Laden was taken out by the Americans in Pakistan. The US has also struck terrorists in Somalia, in Yemen. So in that respect, there's nothing new here. And we've heard, the world and his wife, to a certain extent, on many media stations decrying this as a violation of international law. It certainly isn't. Neither is it unprecedented. Israel is at war with these Hamas terrorists. This is the leadership. And those specifically that Israel was targeting have been directing the Hamas war against Israel over the last 2 years now. They've also been, unfortunately, stalling in negotiations. So on every count, this was perhaps certainly a long time coming, but one can also hope that this change, this radical change that Hamas now know they are not safe hiding out in their penthouses in Doha, may indeed lead to a resurgence of real efforts to get those hostages home, 48 hostages that are kept now nearly 2 years unlawfully in these barbaric conditions.
So in terms of America's position on this, this was rather curious. Yesterday we initially heard that Mr. Trump had kind of okayed this this attack. That turned out not to quite be the case, but what we do know is that it would have been almost impossible to happen without America knowing, given that Israel would have had to have flown planes and missions over American airspace. What is your take on what the reality of that slightly muddled story is?
Well, the issue is that the Americans have a very substantial base in Qatar, and so it's unthinkable that Israel would have taken this sort of action without some form of tacit approval from the Americans. Israel didn't, in fact, fly into Qatari airspace. These missiles were launched very precisely. This was a targeted strike from outside the airspace, so we understand. But, of course, it's not the first time we've heard contradictory remarks from President Trump. If you recall, in the run-up to the strikes that America took part in against Iran's nuclear facilities together with Israel, there was quite a lot of diversion tactic, if you will, and certain comments that were put out publicly by the Americans that didn't really follow through with their intents and their approval, and indeed in that case direct participation in those strikes. So I think we have to take, certainly on the basis of past experience, these public statements with a degree of skepticism, understanding the context. Of course, America presents itself as an ally of Qatar. It would necessarily have to say something negative about this strike, because it is a significant new aspect of taking out Hamas terrorists, even, as I say, in third countries. But that doesn't necessarily portray the full scope, I think, of America's position on this.
And just on the peace talks itself, Mr. Trump did allude to the fact that, I think via his press secretary at the White House yesterday, that this does nothing for the peace talks. This essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially takes things backwards. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think he also said something along the lines of taking Hamas terrorists out was generally a good thing and a valuable goal. But what we've heard in the last few weeks from the president is increasing frustration, not just from the president, I should say, but also US representatives to the negotiations, increasing frustration with Hamas, increasing irritation, and a real suggestion that time was running out for them. So the timing of Israel's strike against these terrorists hiding out in Qatar is perhaps less surprising in the context of what the president has been saying over the last few weeks.
I do wonder, and I sometimes want to cry for our politicians, but mostly down to the ineptitude of what we hear. It would be great for Keir Starmer. He may wish to acknowledge his disquiet on what had happened. It's a free country. He can have that view. But it would have been just maybe handy to say, but, you know, simultaneously, some of the bad guys have been taken out. This is, you know, reiterate, this is a terrorist organisation. These people are the horror stories of our modern story, and they need to be removed as much as possible. So, you know, congratulations to Israel on that point. We never hear that really, do we? We always hear this sort of rather touchy. I mean, Trump does get closer than most to being sort of fairly off script and brutally honest about this stuff, but we don't hear it anywhere else.
You're right, and unfortunately the clip that you played earlier from PMQs really does seem that the Prime Minister was speaking off of a Hamas-prepared crib sheet. Utterly extraordinary that the condemnation here should be on Israel and not the Hamas leadership that continues to hold on to these hostages, that has plainly violated international law, but also Qatar. Let's not forget, you know, the Qataris came for a state visit, the red carpet was rolled out for them. Not only have they been harbouring terrorists, contrary to international law and real international law, I should say, binding UN Security Council resolutions under Chapter 7 passed after the September 11th attacks, but also the information war that Qatar has been waging against Israel should not be forgotten in this context. And unfortunately, the Prime Minister seems to be one of the latest victims of that very information.
Yeah, indeed. And I was just about to say that. You've rather preempted it, Natasha, to be honest. Can we just quit this idea that Qatar is some sort of progressive, wonderful place to be? You know, try being either just a female, a non-Muslim, gay, or anything like that in Qatar, and then you'll get to know roughly what they're all about. I mean, let's not run away with the fact that only a little while ago we were complaining about football being held in that country because of its horrendous human rights abuses, and then suddenly today Keir Starmer's talking about it as if it's Benidorm.
Extraordinary, the modern slavery that occurs there, but also the substantial amount of funding and influence by the royal family of Qatar across universities, government institutions, think tanks, into politics. I mean, all of this has been coming out as extraordinary news, and one really does have to pause and think where these lines in support of the funders and encouragers of terrorist organisations around the world, where they're coming from and who's been writing them.
Spot on. Natasha, great to have you on again. Thank you. Natasha Hausdorff, barrister and legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. Some of you will agree with every single word she just said. There might be some of you who think actually she's off the mark on this one. I think the last point that I made to her was the bit that was making my teeth itch, talking about Qatar, this sovereign nation, like it's the bastion of all democracy. You know, this is a horror show of a place that has more human rights abuses than Amnesty can even fit on a spreadsheet, for God's sake. This is not a good place. It's not a good regime. And it's harbouring terrorists, of course, as was evidenced by that attack last night. Whatever you think of that separately. 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to some of your calls. Started off the show talking about that compensation that is being sought by 200 asylum seekers suing the Home Office for naff accommodation down there at Manston. Kevin, what are you thinking? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for taking the call. Well, I just think it's disgusting, really. The previous chap who you had a chat with, who was a lawyer stroke broadcaster, first of all, if you ask me, he's got a vested interest in what he broadcasts because he's a lawyer and he gains from it. But that's besides the point. Reference to his compensation talk about the migrants and this particular chap who got possibly $250,000 or just over 200,000. I agree with the point, and as you did, that if someone has done wrong and he was abused, and if those things happened, then I can understand. But for this lawyer to stand on his soapbox and say, yes, these people should be given this compensation because a crime has been committed. Well, if the crime has been committed, as you quite rightly said, the police should be involved. So why isn't he taking a criminal case? Because that's what you do first.
You'd think so. I'm sure you do that first, don't you?
You always do it first, because otherwise it affects the case, the criminal case, if you take it second. And not only that, the point more so is that if he wants to stand up for that gentleman, maybe he would like to stand up for every person in this country who have been raped in the past, assaulted, murdered, stabbed, and they all go to jail if they're caught, and not one of them pays compensation. Not one legal aid board is out there to help those innocent people who were affected by crime for them to be compensated. So before we pay £250,000 to a migrant who was illegal and meant to be being deported, we should be maybe doing the back payments to our national people.
Yeah. I think that makes perfect sense, and I'm sure there are some people agitating to advance that point. To be fair, Kevin, the Home Office have refused to pay out and said to these people, see us in court if you're not happy. So we will see how that pans out. Kevin, thank you. Kevin in Dorset. On that point of compensation, one here from Pete in Romford, who says, afternoon, concerning the compo claims from illegal immigrants, I work for a company who contracted to the government, and any problems or issues which were in our remit, we had to pay compensation. This should all be in place at Serco or whoever was running Manston for the Home Office. At the very least, if they want to keep the contract, which is worth a lot of money, it should be placed in with them. That's a good point, actually. I mean, I would imagine that was run by a separate third party. Details on that, more calls on the way. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It was me who actually made the BBC Trust rewrite all of their rules when I was head of media for UKIP, and I argued, because they only based it on domestic elections, the most recent domestic election, i.e. they didn't involve European Parliament elections, and they didn't look at polling. And I kept making the case as head of media for UKIP back in the day, in 2013. Actually, you're doing a disservice to the general public when you look at polling and how many people actually want to hear from UKIP who are going to be voting for them. And I had to produce all this evidence. We had a series of meetings, and I was the one who changed the rules.
Jeffrey Epstein was in prison for relations with minors at the same time that Peter Mandelson was staying in his house. So, you know, you're telling me he didn't... Of course he knew where Jeffrey was. Of course he knew why he was in prison.
Right.
So, but still he decided to live in his house. Now, for most people, they would find that extremely odd.
I mean, this is it, that I was lied to. No, you knew what you were getting yourself into.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 20 past 3. We're going to be talking the driving, the theory test in driving lesson, the theory element to the driving test in a bit. How many Brits could get the right answers to some of those questions? What is happening to young drivers? Apparently, I've just been told I'm going to be put on the spot and asked a bunch of these questions that come up in the theory. I never did a theory test. It predated me. Or I predate the theory test, rather. And is that right? Yes. You know what I mean. Well, I'll give it a good go. I've no idea, literally no idea what questions are coming our way. We'll talk about that in about 10 minutes' time. Back to your calls. Let's go to Nick, who's down in London, on Peter Mandelson. Nick, how you doing? Is he stuffed?
Yes, he is, Pete. Yes, he is, Ian. I mean, there's so much about this, about Peter Mandelson. I mean, the first thing is, Peter Mandelson comes with form. He's had to resign twice from Blair's government, once for lying about a mortgage application. I can't recall what the second one was.
It was passports.
Was it?
Procuring passports for a couple of millionaires.
So the bloke's got form. He is not some psalm innocent with 30 years back past blameless experience in the public sector. So I think anyone in government thinking of employing him, for a role such as the US ambassador or the ambassador to the US, would say, look, Peter, tell me honestly, be honest, Peter, to go be honest. Imagine the joke. Yeah, come on, Peter, be honest. Is there anything else you've got to own up about it? And if he did tell Starmer and his advisors, whoever employs him, well, they take the heat too. If he didn't tell them, then he goes anyway. The second thing is, Prince Andrew was a great mate with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep.
But that's Prince Andrew's public life gone, out, over, finished. So why does that not apply to Peter Mandelson as well? Rules, laws and standards, if they're to mean anything, Ian, rules, laws and standards have got to apply equally to everyone. If it's finito for Prince Andrew, because he's Jeffrey Epstein's mate, then similarly, it's Peter Mandelson.
So Mandelson's defence at the moment, Nick, seems to be gullibility. I mean, he's almost saying, I was seduced by his lies. He's a very influential, kind of persuasive character. And therefore, I didn't sort of spot what I should have spotted. It's all quite clear now, but at the time, I didn't see it. What percentage chance is there that defence could stick?
Percentage chance about 5-10, I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, not only would you require someone put up for the role of US ambassador not to be gullible, not to be easily taken in by a sharp suit and a sharp tongue, and so you don't want someone that naive, frankly, which he's now presenting himself to be. What he could have said, and perhaps should have said, as I understood it, when he retained ties with Epstein hasn't been convicted. He's been charged, but he's not been convicted. Epstein was in jail effectively on remand, awaiting trial. That being so, Mandelson could have said, well, look, yes, I know he was charged. He had been a friend, and whereas him being charged gave me a caution on him, I don't chuck away friendships until the verdict comes in.
Yeah,
there's a caution granted, and particularly for what it was. One of your callers earlier, quite right. There is a running theme, particularly in the Labour Party, turning a willful blind eye to sex crimes against minors. And that goes all the way back to Harriet Harman under the early days of what was it, civil liberties, whatever they...
there was a thing called was it called the paedophile exchange or something?
Yes, that's a pie. That's it. The pie. Yeah. And the year that Harman joined civil liberties, whatever they're called as their in-house lawyer, Pye put up this motion for the annual general meeting, which got read through about paedophilia is fine and normal. We shouldn't I paraphrase, but that's
yeah. Some kids are attracted to
and so
old dirty gits for some reason.
There's a running theme within more left-wing parties, the Labour Party particularly, about turning a blind eye to our children.
Because, do you know, I really think that's such a good point, Nick. I honestly think the problem with left-wing politics is that it functions not just on an ideology, but it functions on a moral kind of spectrum. So the left don't just believe they're correct politically, they believe morally that they have the upper hand. So when a left-winger, one of their own, does something wrong, there is a curious, frankly, anti-intellectual and curious position that, well, it can't be as wrong as like a Tory doing it because we're lefties, and therefore that surely buys us some camouflage. That would require and demand a different interpretation of motive or criminality. I think it's that stupid.
I agree. They are that stupid, and worse, they appear to think anyone who takes a different view, doesn't agree, isn't merely wrong, but they're evil.
Yeah.
It's not like, you and I, we don't agree on some things. I don't think you're evil. You don't think I'm stupid. But there seems to be this assumption from the left to the right, because you have a different viewpoint, therefore you must be sanctioned and silenced.
Yeah, and a conservative paedophile is far, far worse than a left-wing paedophile. It's that ridiculous. But I think that is the sort of nuts and bolts, or the scaffolding, if you like, of their argument. Nick, I'm going to move on just to get more voices. It's been great speaking. Fabulous caller from Nick down in London. Let's talk to Carl in Pinner on the compensation story. Carl, what have you got for us? Hi.
Oh, hi, Ian. Yeah, now I need educating here because I wonder...
You've not come to the right place then.
How do these illegal immigrants get the money for legal aid to sue us? And the point being, Ian, somebody must say, oh, yeah, we give them legal aid, they can sue us. Where are they getting the money from?
Somebody must appear on the scene, like Mr. Ben, out of nowhere, almost.
There must be somebody giving them the money. Who's giving them the money to sue us?
It's a good point. Well, unless the lawyers are working on a kind of no-win, no-fee thing.
Oh, I don't think it'd be that. No, I can't see that. Somebody's financing them to sue us. I mean, whoever's doing that should be named and shamed.
Yeah.
I mean, just before I go, I would stop the boat crisis in a week if I was PM. The way I'd do it, I'd ring Macron up on my PM phone, say, Macron, we can't take any more. When we pick them up, we're going to take them straight back. And if you're not happy with that, we're going to revoke all your fishing licences. What are they going to do?
Yeah. You do wonder why it is. I mean, I can imagine, you don't have to be a Trump supporter to acknowledge this, but I can imagine Donald Trump would do exactly that, wouldn't he, on day one?
Anyone with a spine running this country would do it right away. But unfortunately, Ian, we haven't got a leader with a spine. And we've got a leader that doesn't even want to stop it. He doesn't care about it.
Yeah, I think
we've got a leader, and we've got a leader that allows illegal immigrants to get legal aid to sue us working people. All my children work, all my grandchildren work. I'm retired. They're paying for this.
100%. This is all being, this money doesn't come, out of some magic well sort of centred in the middle of a field somewhere. This is, taxpayers' money on all sides, whether it's the legal aid, whether it's the compensation. We actually pay for everything. Great call, Carl. Thank you very much indeed. A word from Gary, who says, on Monday, Palestinian terrorists shot dead 5 Israelis at a bus stop in Jerusalem, an action that was praised by Hamas as heroic. There is no condemnation of that attack, nor of the support given by Hamas for it on the Prime Minister's Twitter feed yesterday. Within hours of learning of the attack by the Israelis on Hamas leaders, Starmer posted a tweet condemning it. So the question is, why condemn one and not the other? Well, because when it comes to this issue, Starmer doesn't know whether he's Arthur or Martha. Do you remember in opposition, he sort of became more right-wing on Israeli issues with the war than Rishi Sunak did. He was saying stuff that Sunak wasn't saying. Now, I know in opposition you've got a bit of a luxury, but in the lead up to the election, a few months before the election, he was always out of the traps with very pro-Israel comments and endorsements of their decisions and their right to defend. Always, way before Sunak, as Prime Minister, said it. And then suddenly gets elected and that whole thing, you know, you see the wolf's clothing suddenly appear. You get the drift. 0344 499 1000. I'm going to take a theory driving test in a couple of moments' time. Find out what happens next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. 25 to 4 right now. Let's move to this story. Never a dull day in the world of learner drivers. Almost all drivers, though, would fail their theory test if they had to resit it today, according to a new study. This was research by Direct Line that found that 95% of licence holders could not pass even a short version of the exam. Out of 2,000 motorists tested, 1,900 failed the 15-question mock paper. Wow. Let's speak with David Thomas, independent driving instructor. David, how are you doing?
Good, Ian. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm good as gold, thank you. Nice to have you with us. Was this a surprise to you?
Big surprise, yeah, because, you know, you hope people know the rules of the roads, don't you, and the laws, to stay safe.
Don't you get tricked, though, when you're in a kind of exam situation that your brain does all that weird stuff, going, well, I know the answer is, you know, double yellow lines, but for some reason, single yellow line is also one of the choices, so I'm going to go single, even though you knew it was double. And you do that like you do in a pub quiz, and then before you realise it, you've got it wrong.
That does happen. People don't realise how long they've got for a theory test. You've got 50 minutes. You can take your time, flag a few questions, go back to it. But I think people do it in a rush, information overload, and then, you know, so many people fail. Too many people fail. It's not good.
And is it 15 questions on the actual test? Is that...
No, it's 50 multiple choice questions, 50.
Okay.
You need to answer 43 out of 50 to pass.
And
which is scary in itself.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's quite... When you put it like that, that sounds like quite a tall order.
Yeah, it is. And they don't tell you the ones you got wrong. So you may have got some very serious questions wrong, and they say, oh, well done, you've passed. Go out and pass a driving test. So, yeah, it's not great.
What's the hazard perception part?
Yeah, you watch 15 clips, and it's basically a point of view from looking at the front of the car, driving down the street, and you've got to click a mouse when you see a developing hazard. So you see something moving ahead that if you're driving, you may have to slow down for.
Right, okay.
You click the mouse as it's developing. So that's what that is.
So, even if it's a cyclist?
Well, if it could be a potential hazard to you, yeah. If you see a cyclist going down the road who may need to, I don't know, swerve to avoid a pothole, then that becomes a potential hazard. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like cyclists there?
Well, you see, I mean, look, cycling is great. I cycle with my kids. I get all of that. But, you know, every now and again I bump into a cyclist. Not literally, but I see a cyclist on the road who's got, I don't know, when did it become normal to put 27 lights on your helmet? What's the deal with that?
I'd love to know.
Fella with a high vis the other day had about 3 on his high vis. He had a couple on his bike as well. I mean, you couldn't have missed this. It looked more like a spacecraft had arrived, to be honest with you, David.
Good to be seen, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. I know you've got some questions you're going to fire at me. We're going to have a little crack at this and see how I would do, because I never did a theory test.
No, neither did I, no.
Yeah.
Not to pass my test, no. It's a newish thing. But I'll be interested to know how much you know, Ian.
OK, all right. So we'll go through these. Don't tell me until the very end how many I got right or wrong. Is that all right, David? OK.
You're going to answer after I've asked, or you're going to write it down somewhere?
No, I'll answer after you've asked, if that's all right.
OK.
Yeah. So I'm at a disadvantage here from normal test conditions.
That's true, yes. OK.
So how many have you got? You got 6 there, is that right?
I've got 6.
6. OK, let's see how we do.
I'm flying straight into question 1 in. What colour reflective studs are on the left-hand edge of a motorway? Are they A, red, B, green, C, white, or D, amber?
On the hard shoulder, is that?
Yes, it's on the left-hand edge. If there is a hard shoulder.
Yes.
These days with
okay.
smart motorways, you don't get
all
them.
right, I'm saying white. Final answer.
Final answer. So, OK, question 2. What does a circular road sign mean with a red border? A circular road sign with a red border. Is it A, warning, B, information, C, order, or D, directions?
Information, B.
So B, information. Yeah. OK, question 3. What is the national speed limit for a car towing a trailer on a dual carriageway? Is it A, 50, B, 60, C, 65, or D, 70 miles per hour?
The answer is A, 50.
A, 50. OK, question 4. I've got them written down, sorry. Question 4. At a toucan crossing, who is allowed to cross? Is it A, pedestrians only? Is it B, cyclists only? Is it C, pedestrians and cyclists? Or is it D, pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders? A toucan crossing.
Right. I don't like to see horse riders crossing anything, frankly, other than a field, but that's another story. I was just trying to work out the toucan crossing. I think it might be C, so cyclists and pedestrians. OK, so question 5. What is the minimum legal tread depth for a car's tyres across the centre? Is it A, 1 millimetre? Is it B, 1.3 millimetres? Is it C, 1.6? Or is it D, 2 millimetres? What's the minimum tread depth? Hope you know this one, Ian. I think, and I don't... Before I heard the choices, I thought, I'm sure it's got the number 2 in it. So I'm going to say, was it D, 2 millimetres?
You're going for D, 2 millimetres. Yeah. OK, question 6.
Last one.
Last one. OK, you're driving on a dual carriageway with a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit. What's the overall stopping distance in good conditions? Is it A, 73 metres, 240 feet in old school money? B, 96 metres, 315 feet? C, 109 metres, 360 feet? Or D, 122 metres, 400 feet? What do you reckon?
Well, I'm tempted to think it would be a kind of... the bigger number, because that sounds like the safer number, but I'm actually going to go for A, 240. OK. So, there's the 6 questions.
So disappointing.
How have I done?
Not well. OK, so...
Just
question 1.
Yep.
The reflective studs, you said A, red? Correct.
So, did I say red?
What did you say again?
I said white.
No, it's red.
Sorry, it's red. OK, so it's red. OK. Well, my argument is it should be white.
It's red. It's on the left-hand side red.
Now you say it. Yeah, of course it's red. Yeah, go on, number 2.
You said white. White go down the middle. You know, they separate the lanes.
Of course they do.
Question 2. What does a circular road sign mean with a red border? What did you say?
I think I said information.
It's not. It's an order. It's telling you what you can't do. That's important to know, Ian. Do you drive?
All the time, yeah.
So when you say
so what? But I thought a speed limit is in around.
Correct. So if you see the number 40 in a round circle, that's telling you can't go above 40. If you see a bicycle in a red circle, that's telling you no bicycles.
See, I thought that I would argue in court that that's information.
No. You know, a red circle, if you put the letter N before the O, you've got no. So whatever you see in a red circle, that's telling you no, you can't do that.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
Hope you can remember that.
All right.
So question 3, what is the national speed limit for a car towing a trailer on a dual carriageway? I think you went for A, 50.
Yep.
It's not. It's 60 miles per hour.
Well,
it's
frankly,
10 miles an hour
it should be 50, of course. I'm a safety junkie on these things, David.
You need to be changing the questions and answers.
I think
the rules on the road.
Yeah, I'm going to have a word with the DVLA. Go on.
Question 4, a toucan crossing. This was one that you actually got right. It is cyclists and pedestrians. 2 can use it. Toucan. Easy way to remember.
There you go. So I got 1 right.
You got 1 right so far. Question 5. What is the minimum tread depth on the car? You said D, 2 millimeters.
Yeah.
Wrong. It's actually C, 1.6 millimeters. That's the minimum tread depth.
4 millimeters, David. Between mates, or 0.4 millimeters.
0.4 millimeters. Do you know what the minimum tread depth on a bus is?
That's a good question. No, tell me.
1 millimeter.
1. Yeah.
It's less than a car.
Yeah.
But yeah, so far you got 1 right. Well done, Ian.
1 out of 5. I've got 1 more to go.
Final question. You're driving on a dual carriageway with a 70 mile an hour speed limit. What's the overall stopping distance? You said the 400 feet, correct?
No, I said 240. Was it 420 or 240 or whatever it was?
Oh, 240.
Yes.
You said 73 metres wrong. It's 360 feet.
That was actually what I was thinking.
meters.
I was translating it into French.
Oh, right. Sorry. I'm not going to
That's what happened. So I got 1 out of...
I'm scared to death.
Do you know what? And I could honestly tell you this, David. I am an amazing driver. But I'm now going to clock trailers. I see a lot of trailers around my neck of the woods. And if they're doing over 60, they're breaking the law.
Yes, 100%.
There you go.
And also, if you see them in the outside lane of a 3-lane motorway, they're also breaking the law. They can't get in the 3rd lane of a 3-lane motorway.
Okay, that should also apply. Yeah, we should apply that to BMW drivers as well. But that's maybe that's another story. David, it's a grim day for my knowledge of the road. Of course, I was happy for that to be exposed to the public, however, and you've been brilliant. David, thank you for your time, sir. David Thomas, who's an independent driving instructor. I'm going to let you into a little bit of a secret here as well. The one I got right, Finn actually told me the answer. Now, I don't know whether I didn't even get a chance to look at or digest it. He just did he was mouthing the letter C. At least I think that's what he was trying to tell me. Maybe it was something else. Nonetheless, so I would have got 0 out of 6. How well did you do on that one? 0344 499 1000. This one from Tanya, who says, I had my theory test 3 times due to unforeseen circumstances, including COVID. I got 100% each time. As an FYI, driving in London is so much harder than the hazard perception test. That's a fair point. Graham says, Jeremy Kyle is so old that he never had to take a driving test in his day. That's actually true. He never did. Let's get a voice note on this very issue. Oh, sorry, I'll come back to the voice note. Sorry, my screen hasn't caught up, Adam, that's why. We'll come back to that in a couple of moments' time. One in From Sean in Somerset, back to the migrant story, who says, these people shouldn't be here in the first place. They broke into the country. I don't break into my local supermarket and then sue them for cutting my finger on glass that I chose to break. They should have no rights other than basic human ones because they chose to force themselves into this country. Legal migrants, yes, they should, as it was all by the book, says Sean in Somerset. We'll have more from you in a couple of moments' time right here on Talk. Before we go any further, I don't want you to miss out on this opportunity to win and win big right here on Talk. I'm talking about gig tickets. I'm talking about lots of money. And, of course, this is now live, this competition, a chance to win £25,000, £25,000 plus Oasis tickets. So we've got 2 lucky winners. We'll win a pair of Oasis tickets when they're back at Wembley, 27th of September. You can't get hold of these things for love nor money. So we've got 2 lucky winners. We'll win a pair. Plus, that's not all. Alongside the tickets, we're giving one listener the chance to win that huge £25,000. For all the details on how to enter this amazing competition, have a listen to this.
18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word cash to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission. Or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 338. All entries must be received by the 19th of September at 9 a.m. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Story, and really, I think if the king did actually see him, what are they going to discuss? Well, I would imagine, what sort of money what payouts he going to get?
I mean, that is frightening, but so true.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one from Aaron in Great Yarmouth. I've just got HGV Class 1 at 55 years of age, 100 questions, and you've got to get over 85 correct. That's the sort of thing I fancy do. I've thought this for a long time about doing a motorbike test. I don't ride a motorbike. I've just always thought, one, it might be a kind of useful insight as a road user to do that test and put yourself through it, and you probably learn a little bit about kind of road using in general if you're on a motorbike that you don't necessarily digest so much on a bike. And then my other point was just really as a bit of a tick box and go, yeah, I don't do much with it, but I can ride it. If I want to ride a 2000cc Kawasaki, I can do. What the hell is a toucan crossing? Never heard of one, says Debbie. Yeah, what is a toucan crossing? What does it look like, a toucan crossing? Does anyone know? Is it like a zebra crossing but with a beak? I don't know. What is it? I have no idea. A toucan crossing? Get in the bin. Let's talk to Steve, who's over here in somewhere. Oh, no, it's a voice note, in fact. Sorry, apologies. A voice note from Steve on migrants.
Listening about these migrants who are suing us because the accommodation is not up to scratch. I just wondered, did they actually take a lawsuit out on France when they were living in tents and, you know, living at the side of the road? I wonder why not. Probably because they couldn't get legal aid to do it. We should stop all of this now. For goodness sake, are we not contributing enough without all this rubbish?
Yeah, I hear you, Steve. Utter nonsense. Where were the lawsuits when you were forced to live in a lay-by for 4 months? Mark says, reference the driving theory test that I just failed. Mark's in Norfolk says, don't feel bad. Those driving questions were like our government. Unnecessary. Who the hell needs to know any of those answers? Do what the sign tells you, and who cares what colour the lights are on a motorway? It's a good point, isn't it? But you are definitely in that category when you start to go, well, I think it's, you know, I drive down a motorway quite regularly. I see it all the time, but then you forget it. Or you pick the other answer, even though you knew the first. You know what I'm saying. Back on Peter Mandelson. David is in Exeter. David, what have you got for us?
Right, Ian.
Yeah.
Peter Mandelson's intelligence handlers must be geniuses, right?
Go on.
Well, you don't get to do that job without having to report back to Richard Moore and Blaise Meritwell, and then Jonathan Powell. So I've got to say, those people handling him as his controllers must be geniuses, mustn't they?
Well, you'd think so. You're absolutely top of the pile.
Well, I mean, he's the equivalent of our version, the original version, I think, of the Peter Sellers and the Niven Casino Royale.
Casino Royale, the kind of satirical Bond movie, right?
The Daniel Craig, Barbara Broccoli version. I'm on about the original version. It's going to look something like that, isn't it?
I think you're right. You're right.
It's cringeworthy, isn't it? But with, you know, I think that, I mean, the second thing I wanted to say to you is looking at what's escalated overnight in Poland and Qatar. What do you think Starmer's wartime government is going to look like, and what's he going to be like as a wartime PM?
Yeah, I think Churchill can rest easy in his grave, don't you?
Oh, no, I don't think he can. I think he must be absolutely reeling like a lot of...
I know. It's an extraordinary position with no, you know, he could have, you know, if Starmer, even in that response in the House of Commons, David, if he just put at least a mention of the fact that this was Hamas we're talking about, not a collection of choir boys that were blown out the room, but a group of terrorists.
I think the magnitude and the context and the framing is just not right.
Yeah.
But I think what we're going to be looking at very soon, and this is what people have got to get to grips with, is what does Starmer and his administration, even if it goes into a coalition with Kemi Badenoch, what does that administration look like as a wartime administration?
Yeah, great question. On that point, David, I've got to run because we're almost done. Thank you, David in Exeter. Who gets the final word? But then Jeremy Carl turned up.
Hello, dear. How are you?
So you would never have done a theory driving test either, would you?
No. I'm that old. It was.
I've just done one on air.
50 yards forward and 50 yards back.
6 questions. I got one correct out of 6.
Yeah, I wouldn't pass it nowadays.
Even Finn told me the answer to that. But there's a lot of old guff in it, like, what does this, colour mean, or what's the speed limit of somebody towing a trailer?
I've no idea.
Do I need to know that as the person not towing the trailer?
Should we take our driving tests again? We wouldn't pass.
It's a good point, isn't it?
Oh, hello. I've got something hanging out the side. Can I just ask you a question about what's the story? Lord Mandelson that everybody's talking about?
Lord Mandelson
Yum
and the Yum and the Channel
Peter
Migrant
Cardwell's renamed himself.
Story.
Petey Cardwell, he's on.
He's on.
Petey.
Mandelson has got a lot of response.
So this time last week, Keir Starmer stood up and said, I have total confidence in Angela Rayner. And she was gone. How can they have looked at this in great detail before they gave him the job?
Yeah.
It's completely untenable, isn't it?
It's incredible.
I mean, and the guy has actually had to resign twice. Secretary of State for Trade and Industry after he revealed he accepted an undeclared interest-free loan of over 400 grand from Jeffrey Robinson. Then he came back. Then he had to resign because allegations he influenced the processing of passport application for the richest Indian businessman in the world. And you think to yourself, hold on a second, did Starmer's judgment is absolutely appalling.
And then he also briefly sort of came back in an unofficial capacity to advise Gordon Brown as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So he's kind of never gone. Then he was he became a commissioner in the EU.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
It's like, in any other world, this man would be unemployable. But each time you think he's gone, he rises.
And the Labour MPs are already asking for him to be sacked.
Well, I don't know how he can hang on this one, of course,
but he can't.
because he's part of the problem.
And the other thing that I love is the number of Brits who are sceptical towards net zero has risen.
I saw this.
What's it, Sherlock? I mean, really? What, you've just woken up to the fact that it'll bankrupt the United Kingdom, have you?
No, a lot of people are now going, I see.
But as usual on Drive Time, we'll be doing it slightly differently, and I will be asking the question that needs answering. What's the weirdest message you've ever had in a birthday card? 87222, start your message with the word talk. Well, I can imagine one or two rather flirtatious ones.
So birthday cards are a bit like the old kind of seaside saucy postcards.
Yes, all no misses.
There's some really good